Do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So we have an A&R for Newtown Road, one between 410 and 414, a sketch plan of this. Is there anyone to speak about it, or are you going to,
This is a, let's see, here's some hard copies here. This is the, oh, and actually, there's some smaller ones, those are easier. This is the former Yap parcel near 414 Newtown Road. The property was, it ended up in the town's hand, and the abutters were looking to purchase strips of the land. Town meeting from, I don't remember if it was last fall or this spring, okay, approved transfer of these parcels to the abutters if there was interested in purchasing them. Two of the abutters are still interested in purchasing, so we're going through and finishing up this A&R.
My son's in a butter. Does that preclude me from signing this?
B. Scott?
Correct.
The old Charlie Yap house, this is the house right on the corner there.
One of the apps.
There's no house on the property.
Yeah, it's the two parcels behind.
Behind it, I see that, I'm trying to remember where it was on Newtown Road, since I only grew up there.
This is the third or fourth house in from Shaker Lane. This is Peter's house over here.
So these are being appended to 4 different properties, but only 2 people are interested? Is that?
Well, it creates those parcels that you see that are, the property owners that are interested in purchasing will purchase them, and the other parcels will go to conservation. So it'll be with the
Okay.
other adjacent property.
Okay.
This will only have to get done, but because it has to be done by the end of the year, right?
Correct.
Do you have any questions about it or issues
No,
with
I'm
it?
familiar with it. I'll make a motion to approve the,
Second.
I can approve it, I will.
All those in favor of the A&R as it's presented to us, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Actually, the Mylar is there, if you wouldn't mind signing that, and 2 of the copies, that'd be great.
Sign 2 paper.
I'm sorry? Thank you.
Do you want,
We're one of the buying parties, but we haven't seen the plan.
You're buying something you haven't seen?
Well, exactly. We see it every day.
I'll sign it as we continue. Hey, you can go first.
I just didn't make it do this time.
Okay, so how come I can't open that one?
Yeah.
You're up.
That's terrible.
What are you all dressed up for? Sort of.
Christmas shopping after.
That'd be nice.
Why start now? We only got a couple of months left. Why start now?
Oh, we haven't heard.
Are you re-upping? Okay, we have a 640
Can't leave this board to you.
preliminary subdivision, 195 Tadawon Road.
Okay, we're gonna have to go with paper copies, because I can't find the HDMI to connect.
That's it?
Oh, wonderful.
I would say that.
That was pretty good.
He hit it first, so he could be the hero.
I did. I snuck in here earlier, put it around.
Put it on the table.
Exactly. Good evening, happy holidays.
Good evening.
You mean Merry Christmas?
Merry Christmas.
There you go.
Well, it's
No, happy
belated Thanksgiving,
Happy Hanukkah.
happy Hanukkah, Merry
all of
Christmas.
All right, you want to give us, as Peter says, the Reader's Digest version of this?
Certainly. Good evening, my name is Bruce Ringwald, for those that don't know me, from Goldsmith Preston Ringwald. I'm here representing the Glavey Family Irrevocable Realty Trust. We have a proposed development of Healy Corner, as it's being labeled. The names are all historic names from folks that have occupied the property over the years. The property's roughly a little over 43 acres in round numbers, and it currently has the homestead property on it. If you want to give me the next sheet. We submitted this preliminary plan because of the proposed zoning and Board of Health regs that all were before us a month or so ago, and to grandfather the zoning rights and Board of Health rights for the property. This preliminary plan, as you see before you right now, is the conventional layout. It has a proposed way, Dennis Circle coming in, and if I have my pointer here, I can.
I don't think it
We
shows
won't
up on
work
the
on
TV.
this TV.
No, oh, you're right, look at that, doesn't work down there, all right. So, try to be prepared. Dennis Circle comes in, if you're on the road looking at the property, you'd come in to the right of the existing house, and then hook into the meadow. The area where that is shown, and the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots is the whole field area, if you will. And then the longer necks that you see come into the back.
One copy of those.
If you look at the locus down in the lower right corner, there is lots 4 and 5 go way into the back. It's very deep property back in there. We've delineated the wetlands. We're in the process of getting an ANRAD, abbreviated Notice of Resource Area Delineation, filed with the Conservation Commission. The chart that's garbled there in the center lower left is all of the, oh, look at that. There you go. That lists each of the lots, the acreage, the access strips, the lot areas, lot perimeter, the coefficient of irregularity showing that they all meet it and that they have adequate frontage. There's a parcel A, B, and C, which are little triangular pieces that are in the back corners of the property. Warren, if you wouldn't mind sliding that whole image to the right just a little bit. Yeah, that's good. You can see parcels A, B, and C kind of working their way clockwise around, counterclockwise around the bottom. Perfect. Great pointer, Ed. Thank you.
Good for something.
Those parcels are cutting off, and they would be combined with a budding property if we were to go forward in this. Obviously, your regulations require that in submitting a development, a subdivision development, that it be submitted under the open space program This is the conventional layout to show a number, and when Warren flips us to the next sheet, this would be the concept preliminary plan for an open space development. This removes the 3 lots that were in the northeast, if you will, or the further left-hand out by the road. Perfect, thank you. And down, they kind of came down into the back. And per the bylaw and the regulations in Littleton, when you eliminate those frontage lots to protect that area along the road to keep it in its natural state, you're able to add them into the open space. Hence, we've done that, so we've moved those 3 lots over into the open space area and the reduced lots, and there are 17 lots here. So there were 17 in the conventional when you count the 14 in the development plus the 3 off on the side that were hammerhead and frontage lots, and reduced frontage lots and regular frontage lots, and then put it over into here. Both methodologies, the conventional plan and this plan, would use a series of some shared driveways, both as just 2 lots and as, special permit setup. The driveway coming into the 4 lots that you see sitting back in the center of the property would come in as a shared driveway and then branch off into 2 regular driveways to the other units. And this development scenario uses about 13 acres of land in round numbers for the development, and would establish roughly, what's the balance there, roughly 26 acres of land that would be more of an open space scenario. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Both concepts have drainage areas shown in a rough manner. The road, where the bend in the road is, where you see all the necks coming off, is kind of a low spot. And the drainage would come to the center on either one there and collect, and then come off and have drainage areas in the back of the 2 lots on either side of all those necks, and then discharge in towards the wetlands. And there'd be some drainage up back in the back on that other cluster of 4 that would then collect and discharge into the open space around it as well. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Board have any questions? Peter, do you have any?
What do you get me for Christmas?
I haven't figured that out yet. I'm still working on it. I
Oh,
got some good ideas.
Okay, good. I'll keep my thoughts to myself till he tells me what he's getting me.
Under 50 cents. I can't get
Oh.
into the bribery thing.
No, it seems fine. It looks
Oh.
all right to me to begin with. Thank you.
How much of the open space is wetlands?
I don't have a percentage. I'm gonna guess percentage-wise,
Can you guess acreage-wise?
about 40%.
Because you said 26 acres. I wonder
So
how much is-
26 acres, so probably around 10, maybe?
10 acres is what?
Yeah, it's hard to say because they're fingers and then buffers, so I've been trying to stay out of the buffers as much as we can. I can calculate that. I'm not prepared for that answer.
Okay, thank
Good.
you. I'll have more, but
Oh. I mean, this is just preliminary, and obviously, we're gonna wanna see how this lays out with the wetlands. Just because you have it on paper, you haven't done any perks, right?
Oh, we have. We've perked, done deep and perks throughout the summer. Tested the whole area up in the front. Everywhere throughout the lot's been tested.
So the conventional, every single one of those lots would perk?
Yes. And we have perks on all the conventional lots and the open space lots at this point.
Every one?
Yeah, I have to finish up a little bit on a couple of the ones that we've removed from the site. I ran out of time when the weather started getting bad, and so we held off. But yes.
nothing perks right now.
Right now, no, you gotta have some deep groundwater, deep seasonal groundwater to get any perks in. With 10, 11 inches of rain in November, it's quite a bit. But no, the field area we were thinking was gonna be tough, and it perked very well, in the high teens, low 20s. The area in the center towards the road perked really well, single digits. Same with the center in the back there where the 4 lots are grouped, single digits. And the area off to the left side is going to be single digits as well. I just didn't get to finish perking them off because of the weather.
I have a bit of an issue with your bonus density, but I'm not going to really deal with it right now. I think you're stretching it a little, but for right now, until we actually how this all shakes out, I'll reserve judgment on that one.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Anna, do you have any concerns or questions?
Excuse me. So the letter or the note that just came by from
Mr. McIver?
Conservation,
Yeah, the 2 sets of comments. I didn't have the chance to send this out to other boards and departments for their comments. Conservation agent Amy Green, we had a couple questions, and we got a comment letter from Littleton Conservation Trust as well.
Can I see that? How many acres surround this development exactly?
Of conservation land? A lot, I don't know.
Yeah,
but a
it goes
lot.
all around like a horseshoe.
Yeah, pretty much the majority of the perimeter is either conservation land or conservation trust land.
There's somebody from the Conservation Trust in the room. Can I ask them how many acres? Just curious.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, could you tell us how much conservation is around it?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I do have it individually listed. We don't have an open space layer to the GIS town application, but there are some 8 large parcels to the northwest side. And there are 2 parcels Murray Brown has that are in play. And they're contiguous, goes from Foster Street to the whole northwest side of the trust land, the family trust land we're talking about. On the southeast side, we have 9 large parcels, things like Newtown Hill, Virginia Sprong land. Yeah, it's such hundreds of acres. When I look at this, it's, usually the open space plan is preferable because it has a clustering. But in this case, it has a clustering to Hadawan Road, then bridges across the wetlands and a second clustering, which sort of defeats the purpose of an open space clustering plan. So on the southeast side, it's all conservation trust land and also town land. So 9 parcels on the northwest side, permanently protected open space land. Southeast side, you have 8 to 9 parcels also protected. And this becomes a wall in between that. So, we spend a lot on like Joyce Williams land and other things to acquire it. It would be worthwhile to have a site walk here and have some of the people involved with acquiring the open space and protecting it to look at it. From my personal perspective, the open space plan would be great if we got rid of those 4 lots connected by the bridge across the wetlands, because you don't want to fragment open space. You try to have it contiguous and open for both people and wildlife, both of those.
Okay.
And it may be possible to get a grant or something for the back end, and also save the developer from putting in expensive bridges across the wetlands. Yeah, it's usually a lot cheaper having a clustered open space plan.
Okay.
Where everything's
So we're
closer.
gonna look at that a little more once we get a better answer as to what the wetlands and where conservation weighs in anyways.
Right, and typically you make a decision whether you go with open space plan or conventional plan. It's a little more complicated here because the open space plan is spread out throughout the parcel and really isn't a clustering of development in one area. So we would like to work with Conservation Commission, Open Space Committee, and the developer, the civil engineer there, see if we can come up with something that works for everyone. But that would probably mean extending the decision as to which way you go, open
Well, I don't
space.
think we're ready to make a decision open space or conventional until we get a little more information from conservation and
Yeah,
things like
it-
that. This is just the first step.
And we'd love to go a walk there with you guys to look at. Nothing replaces being on the land and looking at it. Let's find something that works for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can just point out, when you look at the blown-up picture in the center, and he talks about the 4 lots that are clustered in the center is kind of dividing up the whole property. Keep in mind, there's a whole chunk of land, if you look into the right-hand corner where the locus is, the bulk of that land is still in that lower piece and undisturbed at all. So we're trying to keep everything clustered in the area, but at the same time, take advantage of the space that's available.
And you're also, like I said, going for a bonus of 17 as opposed to 14, and that's just about that little clump right there.
Something like that.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, we're not ready to go either way yet. We still have more stuff to do, and we'll kind of suss it out as we go. Yes,
Rick Finley, also on the Conservation Trust. But one of the things that the Master Plan Implementation Committee has been working on is a trail system that takes you to the station from the Long Lake area. And one of the loops would be really nice to go down through the lower edge of the lower property. It's well away from any development, becoming in off of Virginia's Farms property. But it'd be nice if whatever's resolved, that's a possibility.
okay.
And on that note, the Bike and Pedestrian Committee would also, if they were present, I'm sure, would speak to hopefully having bike path available. So,
Do you want to schedule for next month? Do you want to wait a little bit, or?
Well, here's the drill. It's a preliminary plan. It was submitted the end of October. There's, as you know, under state statute, there's 45 days, which I think is like the beginning of next week from time frame. So we'll gladly give you an extension, but at the same time, I don't want to extend out too far because I only have a 7-month window under which I have to get something into you guys again.
Well, we'd like to at least hear a little more from conservation and
Yep.
the,
Yeah, we had hoped to have filed the ANRAD by now with them, but there was some delays that occurred.
so why don't we continue till next, when are we meeting next, the 10th?
Yeah, January 10th.
January 10th. So we're giving us extension till at least January 10th.
We can give you extension to, how about the Monday after that, so that you're not handcuffed?
You're so nice.
Or Moran's not handcuffed.
You're so nice. Thank you.
And so
Thank you,
between
Bruce.
that time frame, we have a
right, so
visit.
between that time frame, Mark, can you arrange a site walk with the
Bruce?
developer, with the
Yeah.
developer, his
Conservation,
representative?
open to the Littleton Conservation Trust. Anybody interested in coming on it? How's that?
Well,
No.
it's always up to the
We're
property
gonna
owner.
we'll limit it to some representatives from the committees, but it's not gonna be open to everybody.
You want to set it now while we're,
It helps to know your schedule.
all right. Between now and January 10th, when do you guys want to go straight to this?
12:25.
Yeah, let's go Christmas.
Just throwing it out there.
1-1.
Huh?
1-1, I'm sure everyone will see.
What,
all kinds of
1-1,
things.
everybody be around?
People will be dancing.
You'll be cheery.
I'm always happy.
Do you want to do it before Christmas, or do you want to wait till after? You want to do it while there's still no snow out there?
I think you get a better idea what the land is.
Yeah.
What's low, what's not, what snow covers a lot of it. So, yeah, I think before,
My question to you also, if I may, is this is somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction to the threat of the zoning and the
And Board of Health
and
regs,
all that.
yeah.
Is this really something that the Glavies are interested in pursuing in a hell-bent fashion?
Not in a hell-bent fashion, but right now, we need to protect their rights, so.
What are the chances of us extending things so that this lays in wait without having to go through all of this in a
I would,
in a
we'd be
determined
very,
manner?
we'd be very interested in that. I had some discussion with some parts of the team today about that. What I need to do is confirm that there is a legal format to do that. And if there is a legal format to do that, then we'd be very interested.
Which could be us extending things on a timely manner, basically, extend them for 6 months, give it an open, and then 5 months, we do it again for 6 months to make sure that it never overlaps. And these things, these conditions that are existing now are
I
in
ju-
effect?
I have to,
That's
I'm
what- that's
concerned
what
as to
we're
whether or
kinda-
not legally that can be done, so I have to check with legal counsel on that. But if it can, I know that there would be some willingness to do that, yes.
Well, we got
I
a property
understand.
up of Taylor Street that they've been coming back for 15 years on the exact same thing, they just keep renewing it,
Right.
correct?
And, the legal process for that was through a special permit application. This being a subdivision process, it's a different general law.
All right, so the availability exists, correct?
I will check in, the availability exists from the applicant's standpoint, yes.
All right,
I
in the
just need to
meantime,
check
can
on
we
that.
do it, say, the 20th?
why don't we-
What day is the 20th of December?
Why don't we do
It's a
this? Why don't
Thursday.
we talk to town council and find out what the bare minimum we have to act on in order to allow them to freeze their zoning, and we can give them time to, so why don't we get an answer, and we'll have it for you by next meeting.
That'd be awesome.
Does that
And we'll speak with counsel as well.
Okay.
Our counsel.
That works. Okay. Great idea, Peter.
Thank you.
All right, well, at any point, if not, we'll see you on the 10th.
Okay, and you'll give me a time on that when you're
Yeah.
figuring out your
Yep.
schedule? And continue to the one day after that for,
If you're nice to it, you get early. If you're not, you get later. Hate to tell you. All right.
all right, appreciate your time
Thank
this
you.
evening. Have a nice
Happy holidays.
Evening. to you all as well.
We have a 6:55, continue public hearing, the point, modify site sign standards.
Why are we constantly going over these signs?
I give up.
I mean, didn't we, 7 years ago, say we're gonna come up with a sign bylaw so that we didn't have to do this every single time and have a question every time?
They have special.
They have special permits for it.
It's special, but I don't know, but,
Mr. Park, please.
Thank you. Last, I just have one second. Last time we were here, there was some question about the window coverage and whether it complies with the 50% coverage that was previously approved. So I went ahead and our engineers, and I'll just give you,
50%.
Excuse me, can you guys go outside with that one? We have a public hearing going on right now. Thank you.
so basically the two, you know, you had the two sets of the acres line, which goes really from line past the boxing. Those are really the bigger stores. There's really two issues. One is, that just for all the window coverages have been calculated every which way. I went ahead and showed for each window, because that was a question, versus what I think the information was total glazing. So you have both, because we just wanted to give you the information. And frankly, it's in our interest to try to limit the window signage as well. We're pretty particular about how our buildings look. That said, there was, the question came up about the Party City signage. I guess that raises really two questions in talking through with the Market Basket folks who actually own that building. And that building actually, they viewed as alternative to re-skinning the windows with clapboard, because behind those windows, if you go into the store, are a lot of back of house storage bins and things that are actually obstructed by, I mean, when you look through the window, if the murals weren't there, you'd actually see the back of the registers in some locations or some of the storage stuff. And candidly, I was the one that suggested that colorful murals without text would be a great option, because it would keep it sort of lively, and in terms of the overlay district, wanting to keep it sort of pedestrian and colorful and inviting. So, you know, we may all disagree on what's a colorful sign, or a mural or what have you, but the idea was that it was meant to, we really don't like to put up lots of blank wall, clapboard or block or whatever, because it tends to deaden the appearance of the pedestrian streetscape. So, but that's, to us, that really isn't signage. That's, I think it's an issue of like, how do you handle certain situations where it's not really a sign and it's not really clapboard. So, but they are in violation of the 50% if it's viewed as a sign. The Party City's in violation of that. On a personal preference level, when they string up something that says Halloween, I am kind of personally, we actually had our property managers go talk to them about that. Difficulty is we don't own the building. So in some sense, passing this amendment gives us, there's a big gray area apparently legally as to whether they're in violation or not in violation of our code, and whether it is a sign or isn't a sign. So I think in some regards, approving this, what we submitted, at least sets the stage of, we really should be bringing those mural things to you under a minor amendment. That was never brought to you, so I think that may be the answer to it. There's only one other location where it's a little different, is the Emerson banner on the tower. That was actually designed as a tower and was meant to be green backboard with white letters. The problem is we had installed glazing, thinking it was going to be office space, and when they went up to go put their sign on, they realized you can't mount the sign on the glass. So we can do one of two things. We can tear out the window and put the clapboard back in there and put the sign on it, or we can leave it right now as it is. I think taking that one down would show the back of a fire hall, which really is not very attractive, and that's where the temporary measure. So those are the two things that you could argue are in violation of the sign criteria. Everything else is pretty much well within the 50% criteria of the sign. So I think that's really more of a, I guess, the way we look at it, there's a permit issue and then there's an enforcement issue, which needs to be, I would suggest that maybe after the first, we should probably sit down with the building inspector and kind of go through it and determine which things are now in violation of the new, the amended criteria, so that there's actually an actionable thing. And so in some sense, I'm kind of in the same ballpark as you guys in terms of, we don't want ugly signs. I do think it would be worthwhile making sure the process allows us to come in with certain wallscape that we think is attractive, because in from our experience, whenever you have anything longer than 10 to 20 feet of blank wall, it just starts to feel like a box. And when we approved the zero-line setback, the whole idea was to get rid of that. And the difficulty only with the bigger stores is they rely on the windows. If it's not a store that can benefit from window displays, we really don't want to see the backs of, plywood
Yeah,
countertops.
I
So
would-
it's a
yeah.
little tricky, but I think the question is, no one came to you because we didn't own the building. So my suggestion would be we should probably sit down with Party City and Market Basket, submit what they want to do, and come to you with the proper amendment process that says this is a minor modification to that package. Are you okay with it?
I think it's a good idea. I think in that process, also, you would mention sitting down with the building official.
Yes.
Commissioner,
Yes.
and have his input on that, because we do have a sign bylaw currently, and then we also have your special permit with the sign
Right.
standards. So some way we could tie that all in.
Great. And just reference to the comment about the bylaw versus this, it used to be when you built a mall, you built a giant box that no one could see into, but when you got inside, all the signage, all the colors, all the streamers, sort of all the sex appeal was inside the building. In these new open air centers, you've basically taken the roof off. So it's always kind of different. It's not as if we are, the bylaws have typically been, and I'll defer to you, but the bylaws have typically been there to protect the butters from someone taking advantage or, doing something that is impactful to an abutter. In this case, we have no abutters, so that's why the special permit process kind of gave us a little bit more leeway for the kind of signage. So basically, it's an indoor mall with no roof.
Listen, I think Point's a lovely place. I do think that the biggest issue has been the signage or the window display or the window art, whatever you want to call it, at Party City.
Right.
That would be my opinion.
So I think, so if I, this will actually give you the teeth you need to actually go have a discussion with.
Well, I think,
But we'll take the lead on for
I
you.
know there's other people who want to speak, but I just want to say that I think if you take the lead and you arrange those meetings, in my opinion, that would be terrific.
Happy to do that.
Jamie, are you okay with this?
I just, in the paperwork that we have, that was originally submitted, I don't see anything listed about 50% either. I've overlooked it like a dozen times, or,
Yeah, the meeting notes were, we couldn't find the meeting notes, which I think the planning office prepared. I gave the presentation, and we came forward with the Market Basket sign package and sat in front of the other planning board and said, this is what they want. And someone at the planning board suggested we limit it to 50% of the window coverage, and we agreed. I don't think that made it into the meeting minutes because of the formality of the process, but
and it didn't make it into this, the proposed sign standards, I suppose.
which one?
Looking through this document that was.
I think it's in there now because we didn't think that was, no?
I don't think so.
Well, it should be in there. If the 50% isn't in there, it should be in there. So if that's something we just need to.
I should have $1 million in my bank account, but it ain't in there. I don't know why. but-
unfortunately, I guess
Well, if
maybe
you
that's
can,
why Tim didn't want to show up today.
well, if you can recall the meeting, we can always find it through the minutes, correct? We can watch it. Maren?
Well, back
See if
then,
it-
I don't even know. If
I don't recall 50% either. It seems like an awful big number to me, to be quite honest with you.
Well, if you look at what we did, I think, here, I think you were one of the few that was here. When we did the signage, it was kind of talked about that percentage here, so
Yeah.
I do recall it, but maybe.
It's, again, you know, I don't mind being wrong.
No, I don't
So-
either, I think that's what
Yeah.
we've been working on.
So let's see if we can find it, and then we'll go from there. And again, Ed's conversation with you, if you speak with them and get the ball rolling, come up with something that obviously reduces some workload on us, would be wonderful.
So I guess for us, the timing of getting that approved is kind of important, only because we have buildings going up right now that we'd like to know are in compliance with the criteria. So is there any way to not come back for this particular process? I'm not trying to,
I mean, if we settle now, we settle for later, correct? And we don't,
Yeah.
So I don't have an issue with 50%. If that's what was in the minutes and that's what was agreed to, then there's no reason to go back on it. I think when you look at what you're showing on the Market Basket facade, makes sense. Sometimes I pull in a Market Basket has a lot more than that.
well, right, do they? I think they're pretty good about adhering to it.
There's sales and specials that show up in windows that aren't supposed to be covered or covering more than they should. But yeah, I think ultimately, it's always been Party City for me. You know, that's,
I haven't been by, I don't go up there a whole lot, to be quite honest. I go to Market Basket often enough, and I try and go into Donald's periodically too, because, but the question I have is up at Party City, and you said there were murals inside the glass
Yes.
that are easily seen from the exterior? You can see right
They're
through?
actually meant to like window screen, so you can't look in through the glass.
Yeah, it's the windows.
But, and they have no
It's actually
writing
right
on them?
here.
And there's no writing, there's no advertising, it's just like a mural of,
Correct.
you know, the Alps or,
It's mostly kids with big balloons.
wow.
It's a screen more than anything else, I would say, as opposed to a sign.
Well, maybe I'll take a drive-by and see what that has to say, but I can understand part of your reason you wanted to block some of it off as opposed to clapboarding it back over, but,
Or black, we could black paint it, but that might be just as bad as, anything that's out there.
you could put chalkboards up there and put some crayons out there and let the kids have some fun.
Yeah, that could work. I think, we have to come back to you on Party City, I think, one way or the other, because they're not even in compliance with what we understood as the criteria. So my suggestion would be, if I could be so bold, would be to say that the sign criteria with the 50%, which is what we, if you look at everything we put up, whether it was the Cataldo signs or the common construction signs, or the other side, they've always been complying with the 50%, so half the windows. Anything that is treated differently like a mural, I think really should come before the planning board. So if we were to put in another window screen because we have vacant space, I think we should probably come at least let you know that this is what we're doing in case you guys have an objection to it. As sort of, preferably as a minor mod, so we don't have to
You have a question?
advertise every time. But we're glad to commit to that as a, condition of the approval. And we will, work on this Party City issue. I'm not really sure what the answer, I don't want to mislead anybody. I'm not sure what the answer is because, we don't want, opaque windows that are blacked out or even covered with clapboard because I
no,
know.
but we are the planning board, and I think design standards fall under our purview. And if you're going to put a picture that's in a window permanently like clapboard, we should be able to weigh in on it.
Right, I agree.
Okay, Anna, you have a question?
So this is more for us. So we need to be able to memorialize this, whether or not we come to some decision on it, make sure that we actually have it documented in our bylaw or in some particular way, so we don't have to keep going back to
Well,
it.
this
But then also, if we do see issues moving forward, so this is my question, as we're going to any of the stores up there, is that something that we bring to Roland's attention?
Yep. Goes to Roland.
Actually, it goes to Shelley, right, for zoning enforcement?
Yeah, but to the building department, yes.
Yes.
So I'd make a suggestion that we go to the 50%, like we've all talked about. Moving forward, we could bring you either resolve it with Party City or you have Party City come in and talk to us or come up with it. And you know, we,
So if it's not in the, just so I understand, if it's not in the package that was given, we would need this approval to say, subject to any window claims being less than 50% of the coverage.
All right, I gotta, just out of hate here, it says proposed modifications, 08/24/2018. This is what you have, proposed modification, this is what you're having? Is this what, is someone, well, it says building may not include more than 10% of its facade for graphics and project identity signs.
That's a different, that's what that's referring to, is not the window clean. That's referring to the actual sign banners that say Taka or Moe's Grill. That's where that 10% comes from. That's the actual, that's not the window. That's the-
So on page 2D2, you've
No,
got
it says-
50%.
Yeah, it says, "No signs, lettering, or other advertising devices shall be placed upon the so-called storefront or any window or doors to or from the premises in excess of 50% of the store frame, windows, and doors." So you don't have to go find that.
Oh, very good. It's a good percentage, it's what we've used on other
Right.
cities and towns, but unfortunately, Party City, very worst didn't get the approval or your approval to do
Right,
that.
so,
So you were right again, good. Very nice.
Not always, my kids think I'm wrong more than I'm right, so.
They don't know much, so leave them, don't spare the
so
rod.
you're gonna get,
so
You're gonna
the
tell
sign
Marty.
standard exists, so we don't have to,
Right.
it is memorialized. I don't think we have to do anything other than say that what we've discussed tonight, we can agree to. But I think we should make a motion.
Well, yeah, you have the application in front of you. I need direction on exactly where you're going.
I think I heard it was anything over 50% would need planning board approval under a minor modification process. So we present it to you, and
let us decide.
you guys decide. And we're comfortable with that, because
Just don't come back with something more than 50%, we won't have this conversation.
unfortunately, I don't always control it. You know, we lease the space,
Yep.
or sell the space, and somebody comes in and says they do what they want, and
Can we
we're on
get
your
that
side to
in-
enforce it, quite
we-
frankly.
Yeah, you can,
So we should just vote on it as,
that works for me, yeah.
So I'll make the motion that we approve the sign standards as drafted. Also make a motion that anything that exceeds 50% comes before us for a minor sign modification or window
Okay,
modification.
50% of the window area.
Yeah.
anyone want to second that?
I like to put it down as any temporary 50, larger than 50% in a temporary fashion, because I don't want it to become a, but again, each time they have to come. I'll second the motion as it was written, as it was spoken.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And on a side note, if anyone, we're getting ready to open Metro Rock in 30 days, but if anyone would like to see Building L in its current state of construction and the rock walls going up, I was hoping to give the planning board a tour, since you guys have been so instrumental in helping us get there. So if you guys have a date, let us know. Maren, or if anyone.
Let's do the site walk at the Glavy property, make sure we get good and muddy, and then we'll go up there.
That's all right, let's go rock climbing, so, right?
Why don't we do our retreat, look at the rocks, and then have a retreat after that? Anyway,
You're gonna put birds in there so that they have a real-life experience of, grabbing hold of something that's slippery and.
Bird shit on your shoulder.
what's going on?
Say that.
So
I'm sorry, I forgot one.
one quick question, the skating rink I know is not coming up this year.
Yeah, this year it was precluded only because the construction activities, you noticed, was all up on that side of the woods. We're looking to reintroduce it next year. So we've actually graded off the pad next to Metro Rock to create that pad again. At some point, at some point, we'll have buildings everywhere.
Do you need to
and
find a
we'll need
permanent
to
home?
figure out a permanent home for that kind of thing. But as of now, we are planning that for next year as well.
Do you
How about
own
behind
that?
the police station?
No, we actually, there's a company that we hired to set it up
Oh, okay.
and operate it. You know, if the city or the town wanted to be a partner in it, I think that we might be able to do something where we can carve off some land. And, for us, it's really an operational and liability issue. But if, town wanted to do it, I think we should probably convene sometime that we can get together. It's really beneficial to us, and I think it just builds a lot of community. I have a lot of upset seventh graders who
It was a big hit last year.
Yeah, it was a big hit, so.
so, and then next year we'll have another, biennial harvest festival, so. fireworks in the works.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
And I think I understood that last Sunday was, this past Sunday was a run at the point.
It
It
was?
was, yeah, an activity. It used to be the turkey trot that was
Oh,
not
okay.
working out, and so Park and Rec partnered with the point for that activity.
Awesome.
Yeah, nice. Okay, thank you. So 7, the Jones Meadow has been continued to a certain date. Are we doing it in,
Well, let's see, I anticipate the definitive subdivision application coming in, probably be, I think he's bringing it in tonight, just so it'll be, I'll have the application tomorrow morning to stamp in.
Okay.
So we should be ready to start as early as January 10th meeting with
Okay.
that.
okay, so, and then the 705, the 245 Foster Street.
This is a first for me, and I don't know if you've seen this or not either. The applicant's authorization from the property owner to pursue special permits, to pursue approvals on the site, was withdrawn
Right.
by the property owner.
Has the property owner asked to withdraw without prejudice?
As the applicant has to withdraw.
That's what I meant, yeah. Didn't I
Yes.
say applicant?
The applicant has asked to withdraw the application.
So he has asked to.
Yes, well, verbally, I don't.
Okay, so then that begs the question, do we want to give him his feedback?
I would recommend that since we haven't taken any time of the board on the preliminary subdivision, that you allow them to withdraw that as is. But there was considerable amount of time that you spent on reviewing the special permit applications.
How much money are we talking? It's like $3,000 bucks, right?
Yeah, just over 3,000.
So,
I'd make a motion that we,
no, I don't think you can.
why not?
I'm just kidding. I had suggested that we give the feedback because
I would second that.
as long as he withdrew without
He's-
prejudice,
right.
which he did, so I have no problem with that. Do you have a problem giving his money back? We haven't done anything, we didn't send it out to peer review.
Is that typical?
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
It's one of the first times it's happened on the board, that I've been on it.
It's typical to, if an application is withdrawn before there's any activity on it, it is typical of the board to
Refund, to return
refund-
the fee, yeah.
re-
To return
the
it,
fee.
this is the first time it
Happened
wasn't
this
by
way.
their doing, it was somebody else's, basically said, no.
I'll make a motion to return the fee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Probably saying aye.
Aye.
I think it's fair.
And accept the withdrawal of the
All right, shall we have a
preliminary
few minutes, do we?
subdivision.
I'm sorry, Mary.
And you're going to accept the withdrawal of the preliminary subdivision and the withdrawal of the special permit applications.
But
and site
there is still a protection on it because it was filed, right? Even though we're withdrawing it.
I'm not going to try to
All right,
answer
well,
that question
I
for
don't
Doug.
think-
All right, I don't know.
I don't know if it
I don't
is.
even wanna. All right, so is 710 continuing as well?
So moved.
So, okay, all those in favor, aye.
Because we need to do that one too. The withdrawal without prejudice.
Accept the withdrawal without
And
prejudice.
the special permit application withdrawal.
He should have sent us a letter, but that's all right. We'll accept it.
I think he's still.
How about we reimburse or return with a formal letter? Does that make sense to do that?
Well, that we, yeah, well,
Did we cash the check?
it's
a
been
long
deposited.
time ago.
Just simply return the funds given for such and such and be done with it. It doesn't have to be much harder than that, does it?
Yep.
All right, so there's
So
that.
you need to signal the closeout of the applications in some manner. Either
So why don't we'll acknowledge that we got a verbal
request to withdraw.
request to withdraw without prejudice, that we,
Providing we receive in written, then we're gonna have to have it in writing. Why don't we just get it in writing that they're withdrawing without prejudice, both applications and all entities involved with it,
and then
and
once he does
refund the
that-
money.
And once he does that, we'll give him his check.
Yes,
How's
thank
that? Does that work? That makes it nice and tight.
So moved.
So moved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Works. 710, do we have a 710 or are they continuing as well?
97 Mill Road here?
Yeah.
Apparently not, so there's that.
Right, I just today got the peer review proposal that would cover Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Zoning Board of Appeals. It requires Zoning Board of Appeals because it's, they're proposing fill within the floodplain, So we're trying to do one peer review rather than three. So,
That's what's going on with 97,
yep, that's what's going on.
okay?
But going to continue till
January 1, January 10th,
So when?
January 10th.
10th. All right, do we have a 2 minutes in between the next one? I want to know what's going on with Whitetail Way and why Mr. Palmer has not been here. This is like the 4th time I've asked.
Yep, that's my fault. I haven't
Well, then-
contacted him since Anthony and Chris Stoddard and I spoke with him a couple months ago.
And?
Is that your 2 minutes?
No, I want to know why it's not done 20 years later. I want an answer. I want to know why there's not a second egress from that property, why it's not done. Then I suggest he gets no more permits, and he gets fined. It's been going, I've asked for this, how many months ago?
We can't,
Is there something?
we have no ability to find
The,
anybody.
the building department does. And isn't that the enforcement agent for these things?
Yep.
There it is. So is that loud and clear enough to,
We can,
is there a problem why Roddy isn't here? Do you know why? You met him, didn't you?
I didn't meet him, that's part of the whole problem. I was unable to go that meeting, and that's why nothing happened. They're waiting for me to get there, I couldn't get there. Myron met with Anthony out there, and that was it. And we've also agreed to meet out there with you at a time that's convenient for all of us, and Myron was gonna talk to Roddy and get him out there, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Well, 3 months is later, I'd
No, it
assume.
was last meeting we talked about it.
And the meeting before that.
Okay, so we'll get Roddy
I've
out.
made myself clear, right?
Can I ask you a question? Why
Yes, sir.
all of a sudden the second means of egress out there is a big deal to you?
Why is
I
it?
don't think it's all of a sudden. He's asked for this for quite some
Oh,
time.
no, I get that, but I'm just curious why this one?
Because I've witnessed, in other respects where it's not having to be, you shut down Roger Kennard because he didn't have a second means of egress.
Shut him down?
No, we pretty much did.
No, we didn't.
And that was part of his requirement to build that property back there, isn't it? The fire department requests all that also, don't they?
That was the first open space subdivision that we did, and we requested an emergency second means of egress, which since then, we haven't done anymore. Now we make sure that you have a second means of egress.
What about out at, over on the Acton Littleton line? What's that one there, the 40B thing? Isn't there a second means of
That's
egress?
40B, had nothing to do with us. That was an
15
open-
Great Road? I thought we had an emergency
There's an
access there
emergency
too.
access
So we've done it
road
again.
that. No, that was a 40B, that was, we didn't
That
even have a
wasn't
chance,
open space.
we didn't even have a chance to look at that, but that's not the point.
The point is, it's supposed to be in there, isn't it?
It's supposed to be.
Thank you.
you're
That's
supposed to
enough.
build it. We got the open space, we got everything else, we didn't get the second means of egress.
Then that's something we requested, that's something we want.
Okay. Okay.
Is that true?
We'll try to get Mr. Palmer out here at the earliest convenience,
At whose earliest convenience?
his earliest convenience. Unfortunately, Myron's been busy this month, didn't get a chance to call him and set it up. I'm sure she'll make sure that we get Roddy out here at the next chance that we can. And then you and I.
We got room on January 10th for it? We can put him on right now, right? Send him a letter saying that he needs to be here January 10th to address this.
I'll ask.
Ask who? We can send him a letter, can't we? Registered letter?
I'll ask if he's available, yes.
Well, if he's not, then I suggest we start fining him.
You can't find him.
Why not? Because he didn't do what he said he was gonna do? And what you requested him to do?
Then you'd be finding most of the developers in the town.
Well, then maybe we ought to start
Well, that's-
being a little more
Okay,
proactive in our actions.
fine, Mr. Scott. We'll do the best we can with it. We'll send a letter to Mr. Palmer requesting him come before this meeting this board on the 10th of January, and we'll see what happens after that. How's that?
All right, we'll kowtow to him, that's okay.
No, we'll just ask him to come in. Anything else?
Whatever you decide.
It's not what I decide, it's
Well,
what you.
apparently, it's been like that for a little while, so let's just keep moving.
You know what? To be perfectly honest, once we sign them, they go off, and we don't go back and look at them. The people that build them, and the town offices take a look at them after we don't. Have you ever been through a subdivision that you looked at and approved 5 years ago? Yeah,
Yep.
so I know you haven't.
Oh, I've never driven through any of them.
We might have driven through them, but you haven't done to make sure that the drainage is correct or anything else like that. The shade trees are where they're supposed to
You're
be.
right, I haven't done that.
No, you
So
haven't.
it
done
sounds
that.
like
But
we
I've driven
agreed
through.
to move forward then to.
Yes, to the 10th.
Invite him
Any
to
of you?
the January 10th meeting.
10th. No, I
Can we
haven't.
move on so we
No.
can get back on schedule?
I'm
please?
trying to. Mr. Scott keeps bringing it up.
Yeah.
I'm done. Okay, let's go to, this is gonna be fun. Aren't you guys happy you stuck around? We have 93 Foster Street. Did we find out if they are here? Okay. You need 2 more minutes, or you good? We good? 93 Foster Street, Island Estates, 9-lot open space subdivision. New name, the home's at Croft Common.
That's the Four Corners, I think. I think.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Carr from Stamps McNary. Going over the open space development at 93 Foster Street. I'm just going to go through some of the changes we've made since the last hearing. We had a meeting with the town engineer, Marin, and the peer reviewer several weeks ago. And after that meeting, we revised the plan based on their last few concerns. One of the things we changed was we shifted the road just slightly near 93 Foster. It's kind of hard to see, but you can, I've outlined in black the previous road location, and I colored in gray the new road location. And the reason we shifted the road was just so we could get the 3-to-1 side slopes on the side of the road. Previously, we had the 2-to-1 side slopes, which the town engineer deemed not enough for snow storage purposes. So we shifted the road just slightly near the house to get the 3-to-1 side slopes. We also confirmed that Foster Street is super elevated in the area where we're proposing the road onto Foster Street. Previously, there was a concern that if Foster Street had a pronounced crown, there would be bottoming out when cars entered the development, but now that we've confirmed it's super elevated, we have addressed that concern. We moved a sign based on the peer reviewer. We confirmed the location of the electric and the cable with the electric department. It's 3 feet off the left side of the road. We've moved the proposed street trees a little bit further away from the road to make room for those underground utilities. We added more information to the retaining wall detail for the infiltration basin in front of the existing house at 93. So whoever builds this will know exactly how deep to put that impervious barrier. And that's it. And so we submitted this revised plan set with a revision letter, and the peer reviewer said he was all set, and the town engineer said he was satisfied.
The detention pond in the front by Foster Street, that area right in front of the existing house.
Yep.
We're talking about taking all of that out, and putting a berm in, and putting a little detention pond there. You got beautiful granite walls right there. Why can't you build a detention pond behind those granite walls so it still looks the same?
Yeah, so the granite walls are actually right up next to Foster Street.
Right.
And the town engineer requested we remove those for a sidewalk in that area.
The town of Littleton's asking you to remove them?
Yeah, Chris requested we remove that for the sidewalk.
Oh, it's such a beautiful piece of it. I don't understand why we can't.
And actually, that's a very good segue into the question about the scenic roadway, special permit portion of it, if there's some conditions that you want to apply to this.
I think,
Rebuild, reuse, whatever you usually do.
Well, if they're gonna remove it, I'd ask that the developer save the granite.
Yeah, we're willing to do that, and we'll utilize the granite in walls within the development. That'll be visible as part of the streetscape.
Okay. I think that's what Mark was, you wanted to say maintained, but
I like it.
reapplied is
We agree, so
almost as good.
we're happy to do that.
I guess that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
almost as good.
I
And
can't
Can't
fight
be
with
re-
anybody tonight.
and
I
just so I understand, reuse on the new road or reuse along Foster?
I think if it was reused along Foster, but that's, so many people are so used to seeing it there, that I think that if it was reused in a similar location, maybe on both sides of, what are we calling this road?
Croft Circle.
Croft Circle, maybe on both sides of Croft Circle going into it at the entrance somehow. Maybe put your sign on the granite.
We're willing to do that.
Something so that the people of Foster Street,
We'll have it be, we'll incorporate it as long as we can, if the grading is correct, we'll incorporate it into the front entrance design.
does that make you happy?
I think that's what he was looking for in the first place. I like that idea better. The rocks still stay by the road, we can see them.
Yeah, I'd still like
As
to
opposed to
yeah.
further into the
I'm
subdivision.
okay with that, if they go in there.
That would be nice, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's my only concern about this one. I've said before, I don't think it's really a true open space, but I understand we did it because it lays out the roadway better, it gives a little bit of buffering for the residents around, who are around it. But there's no real benefit from an open space standpoint there's no walking trails, there's no real leftover open space for this. So, but it does make more sense to do it this way than the conventional way. The road layout is a lot better. Anyone else?
I have no issue, I just want to make sure that any drainage is maintained by the developer and doesn't go to the town. We're not going to be maintaining any of the drainage ditches, they all belong to private residents, right?
We're gonna have a homeowners association that will take that over. We'll operate it until the last home is sold, and then, and they'll be used to, and we'll educate them, and we'll be running the homeowners association until we sell the last home. So it'll be in conjunction with residents there.
So as long as the HOA takes it over at
Yep.
completion, I'm okay with it.
Anyone else?
Well, I like the comment about the stone wall, that was a concern for me. I always hate to see them get disassembled, so if it could be used at the entryway, I'd appreciate that.
We'll be happy to do that.
Anna?
I don't have any questions about that.
Do you have any question about the subdivision at all?
Well, are we going to be reviewing the,
Greens?
yeah,
I thought you said you were all set with greens.
Yes,
We're
they
all
said
set?
they were satisfied.
okay. Well,
Do you have a specific concern?
yeah, hold on. I think the one question I had was on the waivers, specifically the one on page 6, 249-43D. So, can you explain what it means by Green's comment? Well, the proposed design does not meet the section 249-43D. The design does meet the requirements of the MassDOT PD and DG.
Yeah, so Littleton's regs are a little bit more strict than the PD and G for the driveway separation.
And so we would have to be granting a waiver for that?
Yes, for the Foster Street driveway right there.
This is something we worked out a long time ago.
You did?
We did, they brought an independent third-party traffic study, and we worked through it all. They met DOT, they don't have
Okay.
Littleton standards, but
All right, so that was before
they
my
went
time.
forward because we agreed to.
Okay. All right, so that was my question. It's been done for some time.
Yeah, it's been.
Okay.
Anyone else? Are we ready to close the hearing and vote on this?
Make a motion to close the hearing?
And second by anyone?
Second.
So moved in second. All those in favor of closing the open space definitive public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now, do you want to vote on this? what conditions?
There was a draft decision that I shared with the applicant. Chris Heath is taking a look at it, so any vote you do take, if you would please be pending final wording from town council.
Obviously, yes.
That would be appreciated. We left open a couple questions. Disposition of the open space, I was drawing a blank as I was drafting the decision.
What?
What was the proposal on
Public
that?
comment on this.
I think we're all done with it, but
What town
So
board?
disposition of the open space parcels?
I don't know which committee.
So we're open, we can keep it in the homeowners trust, or we can convey it to the Conservation Commission.
I would recommend we convey it to the town.
To the town, so
To the select
we're
board.
agreeable to that.
That would be my recommendation. The way this open space is set up, I don't think it would be beneficial to conservation. I think it would be more beneficial to the town.
That's great, we're happy to do that.
before we vote on this, does anybody in the audience have any questions or concerns?
We close the hearing.
Well, I'm just talking before we vote on it, just, I didn't think so. I'm just checking Anna asked. I think do what Anna asks.
Okay, and then so I can add the detail that I heard about the discussion about the scenic road special permit. For process for that, we'll ask for a sketch plan that will run by you.
Yep.
Does that work?
Make a motion to approve the special permit as designed, proposed, negotiated, and granted per the draft decision and town council's final say.
And that we see a scenic roadway, a layout for the scenic roadway, because it is a scenic roadway.
And that too.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
We're flying. All right, Cooper. Oh,
7:45 is your next.
7045, 234 Taylor Street, adult use marijuana establishment.
Yep, in 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, in
We
5
have
minutes.
5 minutes. Came up with a public hearing. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great, thank
you.
How about yourself?
Well, Mr. C, thank you.
So I'll send bills and payroll around while you're waiting.
Yes, please.
There are 3 sets of bills. One of the bills is for the Littleton Common revitalization work. I've put areas for both the planning board and master plan implementation committee to sign. Just came in, I know you haven't seen it, so I don't know if you want to do that now or in January. Thought I'd run it by you to start. So that's one bill, and then just bills that have come in since the last month for the other 2 packets that are there.
Well, I haven't had a chance to review the one for 4 Point, so I know I won't be signing it, just because there was an issue last time, so I'll wait on that one.
Do you want to send those down this way, or?
Yeah. Go ahead, and then you can send it back.
Yeah,
Thank you, sorry.
no, that's all right, you know.
Good news is the timesheets now reflect that we have a department clerk, and she's here, she's working wonderfully.
Excellent. I am glad to hear that.
Well, we have, is Peter still here, or did he go?
I think you said though.
You want to talk about our little retreat while we have 5 minutes? And we're signing stuff?
Well, Peter's not here.
Maybe that's the best thing we could hope for.
Hey, Peter's not here, either way.
Nice.
I'm not sure if we took a formal vote, but the agricultural working group, they were looking for an appointee from the planning board to sit on that board to go over town-owned ag properties. Did we take a formal vote on that? It was a formal vote, okay. We had a meeting last night with the AgCom, and we were just confirming who was on it, and I just wanted to make sure we did it. I know we had chatted about it, but.
We did.
Okay.
I got appointed to tax transportation advisory council that night.
Okay.
My mistake.
I
Didn't you
Christine
get it?
walk in and
Jamie, didn't you get appointed to it?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
and we just were, we kind of, the committee is getting put back together, so.
We wouldn't do that without a vote. You skipped one.
I'm not signing that one until I look at it.
Oh, do you want us to not sign it then and wait?
I would recommend not.
She said there was an issue the last time.
Okay, so we won't sign it then. They can wait. All right, Peter, while you're here, well, you left again.
There's an issue with which one?
Well, we have 4 minutes we don't know what to do with. We talked about having a little retreat where we all get together and kind of talk about the planning board and better ways, different ways to make it run better and things like that. Do you want to try to schedule that for December? Do you want to try to schedule it for January? Anybody weigh in on that?
I'm all for it. Everybody else weighs in. I'm for it.
Okay. Do you want to try to do it in December? Have a little.
No, I don't think December.
You don't think December's good? You think January's better?
January, almost any time in January, as long as it's not a weekend that my family wants to go skiing. So,
You want to do it on a week after work, some weeknight? Does that work?
I'm open, yep.
Does it have to do some weeknight?
I could.
Like a Thursday night that we don't
Yeah,
have?
I could be out of work early if we needed to be.
Okay. So do you want to pick
See
a
what
date?
Jamie and Peter think about that.
I can't make any commitments in January after our meeting.
Peter?
What?
Are you not listening? The retreat.
Never retreat. Always advance. I'm not sure I could do such a thing, to be honest with you. If you told me the day that you planned on going, and that morning you told me, I could probably give it a shot, but I got an awful lot going on, so I'm not sure that'd be something
Yeah,
I'd
if you
be
picked a date and it, and I have a lot of family and friends coming out from the Midwest, so I don't wanna soak up anything
Want to
that's
pick a date?
determined.
You travel more than I do, so what do you think?
I'm coming back on the 10th for the meeting. If you want to do it Friday after the 10th, you want to do it a week after the 10th, you want to do it on,
Friday after the 10th is the 11th. How does that look for everybody else?
want to do it the 11th?
I'd have to check. The only thing for me is skiing. I'd have to check to see what the weekends were that were posted.
It's
But,
no holiday, no anything else going on the 11th, so
Do
it's
you
a
want to do it
Friday.
in the middle of the week? Like a Wednesday or something?
Oh, Wednesday would work better.
How about the following Wednesday after the 10th? Like the
That would be the 16th.
16th? Does that work?
Well, Wednesday the 16th, I can almost guarantee that will work. for me.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Can I make a suggestion that we go to the rock climbing wall? We can build trust as a team.
No.
Is it open?
No.
All right, well, where do we want to go? So the 16th, where do we want to go?
I'll find a meeting room. It has to be public building.
So what kind of time frame are we talking about here?
I could be there by 4 or 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we thinking 3 hours or something like that?
We can take each other for 3 hours.
No. Last man standing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, so why don't we plan on that then?
So Peter, JB, Wednesday, January 16th?
Just put it on your calendar.
I'm up north, but yeah.
You're talking like 30 days from now?
Yeah,
So you go-
exactly.
I've got a clue if I'll be alive in 30 days, so
You can't do
when
it.
it gets
She's-
close to
All
the...
right, so Jamie can't do it, she's not
Joe
going to be
can't do it
here.
on the 16th. Okay, so going back to,
How about the following week?
You guys can pick a day, and if I'm around, I will commit to it then. I'm not sure. I had family coming out for January, so.
Just trying to fit in.
23rd?
I think she's trying to fit in any events and adventures that they can have while they're here. So I think it's
Okay.
she doesn't want to be tied to anything that could be spur of the moment. Something maybe. I think that's what she's looking at.
So pick a date, and if I'm here, I'll be there, and if I'm not, I won't be there.
I don't think that would work because we're all trying to do that. So I just,
That's kind of the
Well,
point.
then January is a bad time.
okay.
Want to
And
do
that-
this
that's,
February better?
that's, I guess, the right answer.
Is February better?
Well, we can move on, 7:45, we can think of our time twice.
I'm open in February.
Okay. All right, we gotta get back onto things. Why don't we think about this and we'll get back to it for the end of the night. 234 Taylor Street.
What month are you talking, 'cause mine.
Okay, guys.
Thank you for having us. My name is Jason Sidman, CEO of Sanctuary, and I'm joined with our Director of Cultivation, Nicholas Sapmary. We are a fully operational facility. We've been growing and cultivating since March of this year. And basically, we're just looking to move forward to the adult use program, which really changes nothing at all at our facility. It's simply changing plant tags on the plants and different accountability. So that's what we're here before you today for.
So it's my understanding, or it's my opinion, that this is merely a formality, that you have a special permit for cultivation of medical, the state Cannabis Control Commission established in the regs that
Oh, yeah, you're supposed to
anybody who's
read
already
it, aren't you?
grandfathered.
Wait, whoa.
Unless you want to waive the reading of the notice, it's up
No,
to
we
you.
should say, she should do the notice.
That-
Well, we forgot all about that. Go ahead.
All right, so, hold on. The Town of Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 6, 2018, at 7:45 PM in Room 103 of Town Offices at 37 Shattuck Street to consider the application for special permits pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, in the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. The application is for adult-use marijuana establishment, special permits under Sections 173 through 173-194 through 173-202 of the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. The property location is 234 Taylor Street, Assessors Map R-9, Parcel 34. The applicant is Sanctuary Medicinals.
Oh, am I dying?
The applicant is seeking an adult-use marijuana establishment special permit as a marijuana cultivator and marijuana product manufacturer to allow the current registered medical marijuana cultivation and processing facility at 234 Taylor Street to allow cultivation and processing of adult-use marijuana at this location. There will be no direct retail sales from this facility.
Thank you. Okay,
As I was saying.
all right, now. So it's basically you're reapportioning part of the product to go from medicinal. Now, medicinal a different form? Or does it,
No, actually, it's really the same plants at the end of the day. They just have to be tagged differently and allocated into the systems differently.
correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're doing non-medical sales, you can get marijuana in a number of different forms, correct?
Yes.
You can get it in gummy bears, you can get it in,
Well, you can't get candy, but you could get gummy squares or lozenges or something like that. So there are a couple differences slightly. One is dosage. The adult use program has dosage restrictions where the medical program doesn't necessarily on any specific edibles, so to speak. Then in addition to that, all products have to have individually marked THC with a big ring around it, basically. And so the serving size is different, and the maximum amount of servings per container are different as well.
so there is a difference between the medical and the recreational.
Just on the amount of milligrams per serving.
Okay, but
Yes.
that can be in all the same form.
The same forms, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
It's all
Nothing's
state
really
regulated.
changing on, I'm sorry?
It's all state regulated, regardless of how
Oh.
you letter and how you disperse it and grow it. That's, the growing stays the same, everything you do is the same. It has nothing to do more than, as you just said.
It's the packaging.
Yes, it's the
That's the final.
packaging, and it's also the Cannabis Control Commission instead of the DPH, but the DPH is going under the Cannabis Control Commission by year end. So that agency will be governing both the medical licenses as well as adult use licenses moving forward.
And this doesn't change you're still not packaging, you're not selling it from here, you're not collecting monies, you're not, all that stuff. I don't see a problem, do you guys?
No.
I do gotta say something. In the first time in 35 years, I used that stuff. I gotta say it, I did it.
It's 35 years too late, Peter. Should have
No,
started.
I had a horrible accident of sorts on my knee, and it swelled up to twice the size. And some said, try this stuff, and I was, I did. The swelling went down in 30 minutes. I was gonna marry the woman that gave me the stuff.
That's great.
Should have.
And I really am against this stuff, tooth and nail.
So the security, everything's all the same. It's just.
It's all the same, that's
It's just
correct.
the plants are growing and racks going up, you're just
Which is all the same.
reapportioning some of them. Or it really doesn't, the plants aren't specific to which,
It's just the plant tags, how we tag them in the system, basically.
so the plant doesn't care where it goes.
I make a motion.
So I'll
Well,
second.
actually, right before we do that, one of the invitations was to actually go out and visit the facility, so I wanted to just say that I went out on Monday, and it's very methodical, very secure in terms of what each particular partition room is specifically responsible for doing with the marijuana. So I think I walked away from that feeling like it would be pretty difficult to manipulate anything in the facility. So
I did the same thing, I went through it, and though you used methodical, I would have almost used medicinal. I mean, it's pretty funky. It's a pretty cool place, and it
Thank you.
surprises me to even say it, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
I also have toured the facility several times, so I think he's doing a great job up there.
How come your
Thank you.
pockets were bulging when you came up?
No, security wouldn't let me out, I had to empty them.
I do have one other comment, too, and that is that as part of the host community agreement with the town, there are dollars associated with being in the town, and then also community service hours. And so I just want to make sure to bring that up again to remind everybody that we have folks who are contributing to town in that way, and we look forward to whatever that is in terms of timing.
All right, now I'll entertain
Thank
a
you.
motion to
We have a
approve.
motion on the floor.
And a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You guys are great neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Before you leave, there's a lady in the audience that I was supposed to make an introduction for. Would you please take a moment and get her information?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, great, sorry, done.
For real outside.
Okay.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you, everybody, appreciate it.
We have an eight, oh God, way early. What did you do? What did you think we were gonna spend hours on this one?
I was trying to guess if there was going to be any public input or not.
Guess not.
We have a quiet audience tonight,
So now we
So far.
can,
so far.
yeah.
We probably jinxed it.
You wanna finish the treat thing while you have 15 minutes to browbeat them?
What's number 80 and 94 King Street?
I think we should just put off
That, is that,
and talk about it again.
one is Cooper's, I have nothing to do, the other one is,
Actually,
Well, it just feels like it's
Weber,
not going
right?
to get done if we don't come up with a date.
it probably,
Right now, you got a lot of resistance, so
form of
I
discussion.
think we can wait a while. I'll keep things going on.
I'm open.
I'm in favor, I'm just saying that right now, you're gonna get pushed back.
Near retreat.
I live
Wow.
right opposite this place, and I've been sending out that notification, going back and forth between the police department, the selectmen in town. It reeks in my neighborhood. None of you live there. It smells like a dead skunk. I have people saying to me going through, what's that smell? Go find that skunk and get rid of it. There's certain times you probably see, Kathy's my neighbor, you'll probably see there's certain times, whatever's coming out, they promised us, number one, we wouldn't smell it when they came in here to ask for this. I voted for it for medicinal, I'll tell you right up front. They said we wouldn't smell it, we wouldn't hear anything, you know, everything would be great. And that's not what's happening. I smell a dead skunk off and on all day long. I've got kids in the neighborhood, high school kids that are coming home saying, what's that smell? And their parents are telling them it's pot. you know, we're trying to do, you know,
It is pot and it's legal.
it is.
But it's not
I don't
supposed to
smell
smell.
dead skunk in my neighborhood all the time. I don't
So-
smell it.
So smell is subjective, just like opinions on color and taste and everything else. I happen to think it smells good.
I don't like the smell either. Why don't we see if we can, you're still here.
I would like to see them, they're working on a filtration system. I would like to see them hold off, you're giving them that permit until the
It's a,
filtration system.
we already
We've met
took the,
with
we already
these.
took the vote.
Well, aside from taking the vote already, the thing is,
You didn't even give us a chance to say
I-
anything.
I apologize, and for the board, I'm glad you're still here.
Thank you.
I think the thing to do is, they've already been permitted to do exactly what they're doing, not doing anything different. They're growing, everything's growing the same way. But she's says that she's getting, some strong odor. She also said that you're addressing that with some new filters, a different type of filtering type idea?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And actually, Anthony came out, and the chief of police came out multiple times, and they definitely have quite a bit to say about that as well, so.
Okay, and you're addressing that?
Oh, yeah.
And is there some days
Anthony,
worse than other,
what's your-
cold days, hot days?
It seems like on a rainy day, the ceiling is held down.
Yeah.
So it's really, really strong on those days. Today, I didn't smell it. And for 2 weeks, I've been away, not taking, my dogs out in my neighborhood.
Okay.
So I didn't smell it for 2 weeks because I haven't been home. That's why you didn't see my note. But on December 2nd, when I went out 8:30 in the morning with my dogs, they were in full operation. I don't know if there's something that, a machine is coming on or something at that particular time. And I had also, when I met with Matt Pinard and Jason over there, we went through the facility, very nice, everything. Like I say, I voted for it, so I'm not against it. I just don't like the smell. And I asked when they get their filtration system up and running, that please notify Matt Pinard and I and the selectmen so that we would know and take notice if that odor is.
Diminished? Okay. And you're working on that, correct?
Yeah, Kenny, so anytime Anthony and Tom, the interim town administrator, anytime we get a complaint, Chief Penard and I have jumped right on top of it. We've gone there, and unfortunately, we haven't, maybe it's a timing issue. When she says she smells it in the morning, the only time I can really smell something is near the front door, if you get a lot of open and closed. But we went around the whole facility, we walked the perimeter. At the time we went out, we didn't smell it. Not to say it doesn't happen.
It's a
I'm just-
different smell.
Yeah,
When you're in the facility, it's a different smell than when you're outside.
when you're outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And your police officers that have done detail of that Hill Road being redone and Libby Square all the way down to 495, they've even smelled it out there and they've said, how can you stand this? So they've
So,
smelled it and I've asked them to go back.
To address that, May came before us, I forget when, probably two meetings ago, and explained that at one time, there was an HVAC hatch that was left open inadvertently.
Right, I
at
know
the
that
top-
now.
At the top of the building, and that was, when that was discovered, they took care of that. And I think that, again, it's subjective, unfortunately.
So,
But no, that's,
well, so I would like to add to what's been said, that if the amount of what is being grown there isn't changing, but that the smell is continuing, would there be a way for you to be able to maybe track it for a week? And
I've sent, I can give you all these copies of every email I've sent out to them, it's right here. So I can give you, each one of you a copy, you can read it. You'll see the different times that I've smelled it. It's mostly in the morning that I smell it. I don't sit outside all day long trying to see if I smell it.
no, it's when it happens. And are you communicating with the folks at Sanctuary?
Yeah?
Yes, and as well as the chief of police too, so, which he does respond, and he has sent out patrol multiple times with zero smell. So basically, we did tour the facility, they are our neighbors, we try to be the best neighbors we can, there's open dialogue. Unfortunately, when she did come into the facility, she said, this is not the smell I'm smelling, this is a different smell. So we went into a flower room, and I explained, her husband's in the HVAC business, really knows his stuff. He walked around with our HVAC specialist as well. How the systems work, And it is, one of the hatch hinges was open a little bit, which was shut, and that could have definitely created an odor outside, but unfortunately, I think it's a different odor than what we're talking about, because she herself came in there and said, this isn't the smell. So there's a little confusion going on, but I wish the chief of police was here, but we'll continue to work together with the community and do the best we can.
Well, I think the smell is different from the inside to the outside, because that's post-development. Whatever you do to it is coming out after this.
But it's actually not, because those outside air handlers, all they do is recycle the air. There's no air makeup in that facility. So that means those rooms are not under positive pressure. They're continually moving, recycling the air, because we enrich the environment with CO2. So that CO2 has to stay in the room. That's the design of these facilities.
So there's no escaping out into there's nothing?
No, there was when that hatch was open slightly outside, because that was on an outdoor air handler. But unfortunately, admittingly, it's a different smell than what she is talking about.
The smell inside the building smells like you just broke a geranium. The plants, because we were right inside, and it's a totally different smell. But something kicks on, and the smell comes out. Whatever, that's why I was trying to pin it down for time span, so he could see what they were doing at that particular time.
Have you had not hydraulics,
Test, lower door test? What do you
no,
mean?
have you had anybody test the air quality test outside your building? A hygienist come in and do any kind of testing?
We have lab grade air in that building. We use secure. Outside would be regular air. We're not exhausting anything outside. That's what I'm trying to. The only thing that would be exhausted would come from the kitchen, and she did say she smelled baked cookies before. That's.
Oh, one day it was chocolate chip cookies, I was starving. No,
So there's
that's not the normal
there's no
smell.
way the air can get out of that building?
No, unless there was a hatch open, on one of the air handlers outside. That would be the only way.
Well, we'll
Mr.
wait
Chair?
10 minutes, yes, Mr. Scott.
I got a great noggin, I can smell that stuff from a mile away. Next time you smell it, call me. You have my cell phone number,
It
right?
comes and it goes, it doesn't.
Well, when you
stay
smell it,
forever.
call me, and I'll come up and I'll lay nose to it. I'll see if I agree, and if there's, see how we do, all right?
Sounds
At the
good.
very least, if we could get, maybe if that doesn't
Do you
resolve
want
the issue, we
my
get
notes of when I
somebody,
documented everything?
hygienist to
Yes.
come out there, and just like they
Yes.
test for mold and everything else, if there's anything, they can find anything.
Just remember too, all the products are tested prior to going out, so it's by an independent accredited lab. They have to be contaminant-free, mold-free, bacteria-free, heavy metal-free, pesticide-free. Never have had any detection of anything on any of our products, ever. So
everything's
when you
free?
mention the word mold, that's not gonna.
I didn't mean it for that, I'm just saying when you test for mold and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I'm just saying there's a smell outside that
Well, I'd say that's alleged. I don't want to the chief of police has been involved in this, but the important takeoff is really we're part of the community. We hold very high values and pride in that. We love everybody here. We've been working with you guys for years now on this, including our neighbors, and we'll continue to work with our neighbors and do the absolute best that we can.
all we can ask. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for bringing
Have
it
you
up.
tried Vicks Vapor Rub under your nose when you go out? Don't throw that at me. It's okay. Thank you. Thanks, sir.
That's all we
Quick,
need.
call me. All right, good.
Thank you.
Would you like some candy?
See what happened, did I lose it?
Dude, go home with my right here.
So I now have an email from Doug Shaw requesting to withdraw all of his applications.
You do now?
Yes.
What, you must have been watching it. Yes, must have been watching it on TV. Him and 4 other people. All All right.
Get some more of that stuff.
On the knee. I didn't want to waste it. It didn't hurt as bad the next day, though it still hurts like hell. I'm gonna waste the stuff. It's only about that much. It's kind of weird. It felt like sand. If you don't mind me asking, but are we still on? The next thing coming up is the map. And after that is already paid, already did the minutes.
You want to do the
Ready to go to red.
commuter rail station thing for 10 minutes? Do we have anything for that?
Yeah, actually, in the electronic meeting packet, there was a project status report and
Did you put that candy in
a
your
public
pocket?
participation, draft public
No, you said
participation
you
plan.
No, they haven't even seen it yet.
Good call.
Then put these ones.
Well, when you gave it to me in a whole,
That was with Judy Barrett?
I assumed that was it.
So, let's
Dinner.
see,
I didn't have
quick
any
overview, she met with you on August 2nd
I'm
to
sorry, dude.
introduce the project.
Let me go here. Is it yours?
She submitted the draft public participation plan, she did a site walk. Let's see, Eric Alverson from RKG is gonna work with her on a market study. And she's got, I don't remember who it was, somebody working with her on the base maps. And she's trying to work with Peter Flinker from Dodson and Flinker, who worked on the master plan, work with him on some of the detailed public outreach, and looking to schedule a charrette or a weekend program sometime in the spring to gather the major public input piece to that.
I did too.
Okay.
And, she kicked out the stakeholder interviews
So you can tell you come from a big.
for
Okay.
today, and Bill
But you
continued
can get
on
when you get
Monday.
your hands on it.
What about our budget? What about minutes? Anybody have any question about minutes? We have a couple of minutes, about minutes. Anybody get a chance to look at them? Anyone have any issues with
Those are
them?
the ones.
Well, I mean, before we move on, does anybody have any question about Judy's area plan? I think one of the questions that I had was around the project working group that she's recommending, whether or not any community residents should be on that working group, specifically folks that might have been concerned about Foster Street area. And if not there, then, making sure that their specific input is obtained.
It's my opinion that, as a working group, a citizen at large would be great. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be somebody that has direct concern of that, because they need to get a biased input. Or more of the NIMBY factor as opposed to the real deal, because if you get somebody that's a concerned citizen, maybe that's my opinion.
Yeah, but it does impact the residents of Foster Street.
I understand that, but what happens is you get a skewed opinion constantly over somebody who's just in a butter as opposed to a citizen at large who may not abut the proposed area.
It's true.
So you're gonna get a skewed opinion, because how often do we see it when we have a meeting regarding a development in a certain area and they pack the room because they're abutters?
That happens all the time.
Right. So, pack a working group with a, I'm saying, just.
They should at least have a voice, I think.
They do have a
Well,
voice, public
actually, then
hearing.
the public participation plan will be designed so that all residents do have a voice.
You just don't want one from Foster Street in the design.
It's up to you. It's-
I oppose it.
I think we should have somebody at large from the town.
Well,
But
all
we
of the
serve-
board
we serve-
members
we s-
are from the town. The proposal is for one planning board member, a member of the Economic Development Committee, member of the Board of Selectmen, and selected staff.
And we're all residents, so, no citizen at large.
Well, okay.
to me, all citizens are well represented. Right.
Well, I think one of the key lessons from one of the training sessions that I went to for CPCT, I think I have the acronym correct, is in terms of being able to garner that community residential input. So if it's not through the working group, I do think that we need to make sure that that's a target audience in here, so that Judy can make sure that she's talking with them.
Absolutely. One of the first presentations we're hoping for is late in January to present at a Board of Selectmen's meeting, hopefully a joint, planning board would be invited, and that will be her first.
My experience with Judy is that she always takes the time to get the input from the citizens at large, the general public, and the abutters. She's
Okay, that's fine.
good at doing that, so.
We can keep it that way. Not ask specifically from anyone from Foster Street, okay? And minutes, did anyone have a chance to look at minutes? We might as well deal with that while we have a couple of minutes.
Informative and progressive.
Were they drafted by you or by, oh my God, did I just get a cramp in my leg? I only hiked 10 miles today.
I think these were combination minutes where believe Janet drafted them and I updated them. I believe they're ready for you finally.
Motion to approve the minutes as drafted.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All our board business stuff done.
Oh, budget,
Budget, oh yeah, you were going to talk to
Yep.
us. We getting a raise?
absolutely. Double.
Cool.
00.
Yeah, pretty much. There's two budget scenarios. One is level staffing. One is kind of the reach budget. Level staffing is continuing my salary 35 hours a week out of the regular appropriations, 5 hours a week out of the master plan implementation appropriation, and the department clerk at 10 hours a week out of master plan implementation capital appropriation. The staffing increase requested for next fiscal year would to be add another 9 hours a week for department clerk, and the funding source would be master plan implementation appropriation. And then 3 items looking at for study areas, for studies. One would be the Great Road Corridor Plan. Guesstimate on that is $65,000. And these items are out, we put them out there for discussion and to help identify across the town which items are priority. So yes, there are a lot of asks at this point, but the reason is to put it out there for discussion. So the Great Road Corridor Plan would be one. Another one would be update the housing production plan. The guesstimate from MAPC to go through the full process of updating that plan would be $50,000. To me, that one's a little high, but there are means to lower that cost, but I want to start at maximum and start having that discussion. And the third request through the Master Plan Implementation Committee is for $50,000 associated with Littleton Common study, and we'll have some more details from the Implementation Committee Tuesday night, but it's for infrastructure and getting to and from the common. Those are all the details I have on those. Most of the requests are in the draft budget at the moment.
Okay.
How long is Great Road that we would need a survey to be done on that isn't developable already on Great Road? Great Road is $60,000 for them to tell us what? No more banks?
Well, it's one of the recommendations that came out of the master plan, was to do a corridor study.
So that's from the common all the way down to Power Road, right?
All the ways to where?
Power Road? That's great.
Well, and that would be, in my opinion, that should all be part of the discussion. What area do we want to study? How do you frame it?
Well, you got, it's developed all the ways right till Danny Pickett's. He's the only one you have a discussion with. On the left-hand side, the same thing. On the right-hand side, heading out of town, it's residents already. So what's the discussion there? Then you come all the way down to the Acton Toyota from there to town,
Yeah, we
to
just
the
saved-
lights.
We just saved 60 grand.
There you go. As far as I'm concerned, let's talk about the other 50 they want to take from us.
Right.
What's the other one for?
They want to take from us, this is to open up, to the full town for discussion. It goes, you discuss, it, the master plan implementation committee discuss it, the selectmen and the finance committee prioritize things, and it goes from there. So it does get full vetting.
I vetted.
I heard you vet.
We did vet. All right, well, we stretched it as long as we can. Okay, we have a discussion, Cooper Farm Estates, 8:15.
Due to the circumstances and the discussion of which will now ensue, I shall relieve myself from this effort. And
You're coming back, though, right?
the next one is them again. I'm all done.
No. Yeah, actually, you are.
Barren Way.
Barron Way. 9 o'clock Barron Way.
Somebody here for that?
Yeah.
Well, I disagree with it. There it is.
Good, you can go then.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen, ladies. Those of you who are
Related. Okay. So, you're here to talk to us about senior affordable units.
We understand that the board asked us to come in, and so we're here, and we're happy to talk to you about whatever it is that you had in mind from the agenda. It looks like you want to know what's happening with the senior affordable units at the Dean Lane portion of Cooper Farm. As you may recall, Dean Lane was permitted and is being developed under the old 55 and over bylaws. That project has started. Construction is underway. There are 3 units which have been completed and sold. The expectation is there's going to be somewhere between 16 and 20 units in the 55 and over, just depending on market conditions as we go along. The interesting complication with this is, and I'm sure you've seen some of the correspondence back and forth with GHCD, is their interpretation of the town's bylaws is that it goes beyond the age restrictions which would be permitted by the feds, and accordingly they are not allowing units, affordable units produced under the town's bylaws to count in the affordable housing inventory. I understand that Maren was going to have some conversations with someone from DHCD to see if they could perhaps convince them to think otherwise. I know this has been it's been on the regs for a while, but I don't know if it's been enforced in the past, so this is a new issue.
Right, and what you were saying about that DHC may or may not allow these affordable units to be added to the subsidized housing inventory is information that I think was shared to us from Maureen O'Hagan from MCO Housing Services. She really knows her stuff. But the town is in the process of talking with DHCD to see if this is a unique situation or not, where we've done a lot in the recent past about to support affordable housing. And given this development was designed several years ago.
Under the old bylaw.
Yeah.
We no longer have a 55 and older bylaw. This was the last one permitted
Right.
under that bylaw.
Right. And we're checking with them on what's the best process to have a good chance of getting a positive response from them. So I was emailing as late as today with them about it.
And just to add some information to it, as you know, going through the process with DHCD is to market these units is rather complex and a very time-consuming project, and the developer has been working with a group over the last 6 months or so to try to find the right group to help market these units. So we've been going through that process. I'll let Janet Field, on behalf of the developer, give you a little more background on what's happened thus far. It is the intent to provide these units, and it's really more of a matter of how do they get marketed if DHCD doesn't want to be involved.
So I actually started the process a little over a year ago of investigating different, I'm sorry.
For the record.
Janet Field.
Yeah, sorry. I started the process a little over a year ago of interviewing and researching and just trying to understand more about the process and how we could best and most effectively get the units marketed in a timely fashion so that, because I've been getting phone calls before we even broke ground from town people just saying, what are you, how do I get into one of these affordables? I mean, I'm not kidding you, probably a couple times a month I'll get a phone call. So, in these people's best interest, so I have an answer for them. It's embarrassing, and say, oh, I'm sorry, I'll have to get back to you. I've been trying to understand more about it and do research so I can point them in the right direction. And I landed on MCO as my best resource of, I liked them the best. I thought they weren't the cheapest, but the people, Maureen and the other woman that she works for, were very, very smart, knowledgeable, and I trusted them. I thought they would do a good job for us and for the potential buyers. So we went with them, we gave them a deposit, and then through our discussions with them, when they learned exactly, when they read the town bylaws carefully, that was the next step, was for them to learn exactly the way the Littleton bylaws were written. They were like, whoa, this may not work, because, and then they passed me the law, the DHCD law, saying that the way the Littleton bylaw was written, they would, in their opinion, not consider them acceptable for.
To be included
But
on
we
this-
haven't had the discussion.
Right, to be included on the subsidized housing inventory.
But we haven't had that discussion with the state.
Right.
No.
All right, so
Right, so-
that sounds like the next logical step is to have that
Right, well, I
discussion.
mean, right. So, and Maureen and I have talked, several times over the last 2-3 months, so, it's, yeah.
Either that or you can just make them all affordable.
I mean, yeah. So in the last, so this was going back to I think February of 2017 is when the memorandum went out, though. So, I'm hopeful that for the town of Littleton that it will still happen, but in the meantime, it's just our hands are tied a little bit about taking that next step to make this happen. So I'm glad that we have the opportunity to kind of apprise the whole board of the situation, because it's really just been Maureen and I communicating about it. But I just want you to know that it's not for lack of effort that we haven't been able to take the next step of going forward with marketing and getting a lottery going. Would love to do it. I would love to be able to give prospective buyers
The answer to
solid
that question.
information and get them,
Well, let's make sure
interested in it.
let's make sure we have a conversation with the state. and
Yeah, and our first question to the state is, what process do you recommend to us to get a solid answer? And then you had sent me an email yesterday or today about that with some timing proposals, and the board hasn't been able to be part of that conversation yet either, and I think that's probably helpful.
Ideally, we wanted to do, do 2 phases, so to try to get occupancy for at least 2 of the affordable units in the first half of 2019. And ideally, now we're running into, I don't know if we'd be able to get all 4 in 2019. It will depend. Maureen said that it will be a minimum of 5 months from when we start the process to when she'll be able to get somebody through that whole approval process. However, if it's not going to count, if it's not going to be part, then the whole process changes. So
Does it move faster if it doesn't count?
yeah.
So,
And then we'll be coming back before you and saying, okay, how do we want to go about this? Obviously, we'll still want them to be affordable housing, but that's going to be just a whole other
Right, at
So-
that point, it's working on, you know, what does the deed writer look like? And,
How does the town want to handle?
yeah.
So how many units are we talking in total of affordable?
A minimum of 4, potentially 5, depending on how many we build.
Wasn't it 6?
It's 25%.
25% of what we end up building, but it's never going to be 6 because our septic was,
Couldn't handle that large of a development.
yeah.
But that's what was approved, though, right?
No,
There's no number actually approved.
no requirement.
It was, didn't we have a finite number?
Right, the plans that you approved show 24 senior units.
55 and older.
Yes,
Yes.
over 55
And
units,
25% of those are
correct. That would be 6.
6, yeah.
But we were going to do a stormwater treatment plant at that point, and we couldn't get the,
So the plans won't support that, or the property won't support that large of a development. We're unable to do that. The actual approval itself does not have a fixed number of affordable units.
Well, I think the most important part is getting the affordable units, whether they count or they don't count. It's-
It'd be great if they did, but the most important part is to
Get 'em.
get them.
But for us to be able to offer those to the public, we need to know which line of processes we take in terms of the marketing, and that requires some feedback to the town from the state. And so once we have that direction, we can get running on that.
All right, so we'll do our part to try to get an answer for you. But if it's gonna take a while and it's not gonna, the most important thing is the affordability. Whether they count towards the 40B boogeyman or not is another story.
And so we can support that, can get that going if everyone's on board with, we understand these are not going to be count towards the inventory, it's just a different
you
process for us to take.
sorry,
Let's get the answer from the state and we'll
person.
guide you from there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we were working today, interim town administrator and I were, started with Chris Clutchman, and she's sent us to, I'm not going to remember the gentleman's name.
Oh.
But he offered to.
Because there was a
guide us.
woman that I was told, I'll email you. I was told there was a woman who would ultimately be able to force a decision if there was one.
Right,
I still
and there are
don't
several
understand
different
this, so I
ways
wanna
that
go back
the
and make sure I do.
town can apply. We could actually
For some reason, the
apply
state
for
is not allowing them to
local
count
action
as
units,
part of our inventory.
but it's not clear if it's
We don't know why.
worth going through.
I know why. I'm
I
sorry.
can help you with
Okay,
that.
why aren't they?
Because they consider it discriminatory. You're discriminating against families by having them be age restricted.
Right.
By saying that nobody with children can move in, you're discriminating against a family with a child.
And whereas the federal laws will allow you to have a housing that's geared towards the elderly by having one resident be 55 or over, our bylaws are more restrictive, and it requires every occupant to be 55 and over. So
Or-
it doesn't allow
You
someone to
can't
have
live
a
there for
younger
6 months.
spouse, or to have a child with them or a grandchild with them in the property.
Right, and even if the town would have the authority to waive part of those requirements from the zoning side, nobody on the town level can waive the requirements from the Title V side,
Right.
so.
And
Fair point.
with
Thank you, Maureen.
Cooper Farm, we're in a situation where we've already sold those houses. I thought about that, tried to think about it every which way, to these families who are living there, the 3 houses, and they've bought them with the knowledge that they're not going to have a whole bunch of families living next to them. You know what I mean? So even if we could, change numbers and look, it's just not going to
It's
happen
part
with
of the
that at this
condominium
point.
documents for the development, and everyone who has bought into that regime.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
but does that make sense, that that's why the state has considered it?
Well, that makes sense. So may I have a follow-up question?
Sure.
So you said that the affordable units are a solid number, and that was because of the septic system once you got in there. So wasn't that something that should have been determined in advance so that you would have known that the septic system was going to be able to support all 24 units?
No.
I mean, when you do a preliminary, when you come before, with a conceptual plan for, you don't, the septic design isn't solid at
We
that
had 2
point.
separate sites, but the DEP deemed them, there were 2 separate parcels, never owned by the same person. They were, the DEP
It's
deemed that they
no,
would be.
the answer is no, at that point. When you do a subdivision, you don't have approvals on everything at that point. That's just not the way it works. You don't have, like, you don't have an individual septic design approved at that point. It's just not the way. You come in with a subdivision plan, you don't have,
And what about in the definitive then?
you may have testing, but you don't have a definitive septic design at that point.
Yeah, that's the same as if it was individual septics, that's the.
Well, because the town is losing out on one of those units, it's supposed to be.
And the developer's losing out on
Right.
4
Yeah.
units,
Right, I mean,
so it's proportional.
so, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate for all of us, I guess.
Okay.
Let's see what we could, how we can get around the state or work with the state on that one. Any other issues with Cooper Farm?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, I do have a question. So when I was an audience member, before I became a planning board member, I recall that there was some discussion about the original farmhouse being donated to the town. And I think there's a Christmas tree lot going on there, which I don't think is run by the town. So what's the status on the house?
So the house is treated separately under the host community agreement, and will be donated towards the end of the whole construction of the project. In the interim, it's being used as an office it can be used for marketing or for someone on site overseeing the property. But that will be a gift to the town at the end of construction.
Do we not have a hard date established? I thought there was a hard date established with the select board through the host community agreement.
Not to my knowledge.
Is there a drop dead date in the host community, since we didn't do the host community agreement, as to when the disposition of the house is gonna be?
Not that I'm aware of, Mark. I believe two selectmen had gone out and took a tour of the house, and I'm not sure I heard back on a drop dead date.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions, concerns? Jamie, you good?
The ag piece that you guys had promised the town that you were gonna keep in the front, that doesn't really look usable.
That has
Super
been
that.
deeded to the town. The town owns that.
But you didn't make it so it's very usable, so, I mean, it's.
Which parcel?
The parcel towards Danny Pickard's.
He just
Parcel in the
and-
front towards Danny Pickard's.
Yeah, he heralded it and put winter eye on it
And
a couple months ago.
and the way that the ground is graded to the Donellan side of it, the way that the water all sits in there, it's not really, you didn't really leave it untouched and workable. You might be able to plant rye in there, but it doesn't look like something that you can really garden.
Is it the lower portion towards Danny's?
Right where the entrance is into the Cooper Estates, to the left of the house, the property there that was all promised to be kept agriculture and working, doesn't look like it can really be worked and tilled.
To the left of the house?
To the left of the house, all that frontage
Anything
there.
done to that? I mean, because it was deeded to the town quite some time ago. So we don't have control over it.
He just hayed and smoothed out, that Danny just.
The piece right in the front that you were gonna keep as a reminder of what was there in the past, so.
Talking as soon as you come in the roadway.
Right.
Right there.
Yeah.
On the left, as you're coming in on the left-hand
Closest to
side.
Donaldson's or furthest away from Donaldson's? I'm sorry that I don't.
The left-hand
ask.
side.
Facing the house where the tree farm is currently, the Christmas trees are being sold.
left.
To the left, I think.
Facing the house.
So
to the left.
right where the job site
I
trailer
don't
is?
have a
Cooper Farm, that's the right.
That's the other side.
So you
We're
mean just,
looking at it
she's,
coming out,
I think she's
looking at it
talking about
coming
where
out, 'cause they're
Danny
all
just smoothed it out.
The small little tiny parcel that's like a 3/4 of an
The
acre?
frontage there, I mean, I've driven in there, that was the piece that was promised to be kept in agriculture, and it doesn't really look like it's been well cared for, I suppose.
There's a piece in the back that's been promised as agricultural for haying, because you guys are providing
Yep. That one's
access.
still there too.
And the disruption of the soil all around while you're building hasn't changed the where that property is and how water's flowing?
No, it still goes to the same wetlands areas that it did prior to anything.
So, and this is asking a question, does Danny have a contract with the town for,
Okay, we have there's the plan right there, so show us where it is.
Yep.
this piece?
That's what she's talking about.
And to the other side of that roadway.
This piece also?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't
What is-
touched it. That part hasn't been touched one
Because
time.
I know that
That's still a field right there.
this is
Yep.
providing, you guys are providing access
Yeah.
between, an easement between, I don't remember which house, but I know there's
Um,
an easement
it's
access.
a little further to
Down?
the,
Yeah,
down.
it's right there.
Okay.
We eliminated lot
Oh, there you go.
20
Oh.
also on that plan, so that the easement's actually a larger area to get in on that as well.
Those are the things I remember, I don't remember. the others.
Yeah, so where the entrance is towards, I guess, the east side,
Right there?
correct?
Yeah.
Those parcels there were promised to be kept agriculture.
Yep.
I don't think you have taken into consideration as you've built the road, and there's trees planted there now too. So, the way equipment can get in there and the way that the ground is graded around it.
The lower piece where the arrow is right now, there's an access coming from Danny's right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
but there's trees blocking it, so as those
That was a
trees.
requirement. The planning board, you guys required that.
I'm talking about the ag piece, so, so that and then the entrance over towards the Donellan side. May I ask why you decided not to go with like the stone walls that were there and you went with more of that like cheap block? Instead of like, I don't know, holding on to some of the stone walls that were there to build that entryway?
I still have tons of stone, but I thought that looked
Just a
nice.
question.
Yeah. I don't like, particularly don't like the round field stone wall. I don't think they hold up as well. I don't know, I'm gonna offend someone by keep saying it's a cheap wall, but
Because it was like thousands of dollars, but.
Agree to disagree, I suppose, right? That's what makes the world go round. I've seen so many projects go on with development, and developers have promised the agriculture piece. You know, when we
I
had
think
gone
we
through
improved it
this,
so far.
when we had gone through this, you kind of like cater to the recreation piece, the open space and preservation piece, and then we talked about having some tilled ground towards the front. Whether it remains in agriculture or grows up to be a field of overgrown rye, I just want to remind you that, you know, when you disrupt stuff, just keep it in mind as you're, you know, planting trees or putting in roadways and all that stuff to just try and keep it the way it was. It was prime agricultural soil, so we just don't want to disrupt it.
And I think that's a very fair point and a good point. And just to be clear, the town does own that, so we do not have any right to
But you're working
modify
around it.
So we can work around it, you're right. And we need to be
We did plant the
careful of
trees,
it.
so I thought we were required to, I mean, we were trying to follow the plan, so.
Yeah, that's the
I don't know if we
tree
should-
plan.
Yeah, ask for,
But it's a good point, and one we'll take care of as we're out on the property.
but yeah, that would be I mean, that would be a good question if somebody, you know, I don't know what the.
Maybe someone ought to have a conversation with Danny, because he spent 2 days working in that middle field in the horseshoe section, and spent some time, and we spent some time with him prior to that, getting some of the rocks out of the middle of the field so he can make it a usable field for the whole thing and not have
Bramble, like some brambles.
Wasn't there like
it was like knotweed
There's
and
an overgrown orchard.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was trying to.
that was supposedly knotweed and vines, dividing those two smaller fields into now he has I don't know, maybe someone should ask him about how he likes it now. For next year, I mean, he's gonna either plant grass or something else in it,
Were there pumpkins this year as well? Or was that
No.
last year?
Is that on the other
No,
side?
it's on the other side.
The other two fields are still the same as they were prior to us doing anything. He still hated them last year, both of them. And he does have access to that lower field from his, there's a stone wall where you can go in and, he said he was just so busy this year, he didn't get a lot of haying in anyway because of the rain, so.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else? Are you good, Jamie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Board have any other questions before we move on to the next? Anyone in the audience have any questions before we move on? Hearing nothing, I'm going to move on to our 8:30 continued public hearing for 8094 King Street, Senior Residential Development Special Permit, Water Resource District Special Permit. So,
Good evening.
evening.
So, it's been a little while, because we had, and just to backtrack again, Jennifer Platt on behalf of Field Development. We had a plan in front of you 2+ months ago. Was it 3 at this point? September?
We're here in middle of September.
September, with a site plan, which we had been working with the town since March of this year. So we've been going on about 8 months, where we've gone through a number of iterations of the plan, trying to work with the board and the comments from both the board and folks in the audience to come up with a plan that we thought really was answering as many of the requests and that we could, and still kind of have a plan that would make sense to the developer as well. I don't know if we can pop, do we have any of our boards up?
No, I could, yeah, I got
The,
a color plan.
Now, if you may recall, we're looking at the Weber property on King Street. Mrs. Weber is in the audience. This has been her property for many, many years. We are proposing a 17-unit development here under the Senior Residential District. As required by the bylaws, we have tried to make this development both accessible and very livable for seniors in town. I mean, some of the things that the board had requested, as you know, from the first plan we submitted to this one that you see now, the density has come down by about half. The units here are all single-level cottages or duplexes, so there's going to be 2 bedrooms in each, which is, as you know, the max allowed under the bylaws. So the bedrooms, the bathrooms, kitchens, living area, it's all on a single level. It all has 0 clearance entrance, so you can get in directly from the front access, from the driveway. You can move around through the unit. The doorways are sized, so you could get a wheelchair through it. We have made a big effort to make this, I think, a more attractive and a more interesting project by some of the amenities that have been added. If you recall, we've been in discussions with the high school, who is very interested in having additional tennis courts, which you can see in the upper portion of the property. And so we'd be dedicating a portion of the land to have tennis courts to make that a very active opportunity available for the residents. There is a walking trail that's proposed. It's hard to see on the black and white, but in the color around the outside, and then going into the middle of the street in the center, where there's a gazebo area and some additional open space, which could provide a gathering area for residents. Also, there you'll see in a couple of spots, we've proposed some raised community garden beds, to encourage people to get outside, have an opportunity to work together on some leisure activity. One of the comments we had early on, we'd seen both in Judy Barrett's report on Jones Meadow and then again on ours, is to try to reduce the number of curb cuts, and we've done that by, as you'll see, there's a number of duplexes which will have a shared driveway, as well as there's a group of 4 units we put off to the far west of the property. Again, so there's just a single curb cut off the main road for those 4 units to, again, try to cut down on curb cuts and make that a little bit more accessible. I mean, this is essentially a standalone development, so I would not expect there to be significant traffic coming in and out of here. I'd expect this to be a very sort of limited number of car trips through the development. So in terms of someone coming out and going for a walk around just walking on the roads, as we often do, this should be a very safe environment. I'm going to go through some of the other points that Judy raised in her comment memo, and I think she wasn't looking at the current house plans, because she referenced a 2-story the project, and these are, as you know, these are all single-story, as well as one of the things she had commented is perhaps we could have clusters of houses, have things a little tighter to have more open space, and as you know, that was some of the earlier plans we had presented to the board, had townhouses clustered together, and the request of the board was not to do that, to break it up. So the plan we have here today is just the standalone cottages, which you can see a plan of them up now, and duplexes, which are...
They just came in.
I didn't realize nobody had
Oh.
sent it to you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Then apologies for that. Please, these are what they look like. I think we've made an effort of having an interesting architectural details to the facade. We'd heard comments over and over, both for some of the other projects coming in front of the board as well as ours, not to have a flat front, not to have it just be a plain, unbroken facade. These, you can see there's a lot of, we tried to put a lot of interesting architectural detail in the facade just to make them attractive units, to make it someplace where people are going to enjoy and want to live. To the extent that we could do things in, recommended by Judy Barrett, and again, we had the benefit of seeing her comments before on Jones Meadow, those we have already incorporated. Happy to kind of walk through those one by one, but some of the things she had mentioned were limiting curb cuts, which we've made a concerted effort to do. Something that I know that the board and Judy had commented on is about the open space around the rear, on the outside or perimeter of the project. Part of that is just complying with the bylaws. We have a 30-foot setback on the sidelines, so there is going to be that open space around the back. It does provide a nice buffer to, between neighboring properties, and gives the individual homeowners the benefit of sort of the spaciousness around their units. We have the same sort of concept with each of these to give them, some space, the feeling of sort of openness and space around them, as well as having the open space going back towards the tennis courts and around the edge of the property, and then again, right in the center where we were proposing a gazebo, but it was really meant to have something that would be of interest right in the middle to create a sense of community and to draw people together. So happy to go through anything in more detail with you, but just wanted to give you an overview of where we were.
Okay. Jamie, do you have any questions?
With how much we brought up the second means of egress, where are we on that with so many other projects?
Well, we're under 19, so it's not an issue.
Okay.
That's why we're under 19. Because
And
there is no second means of
And
egress.
actually, on this one, the fire department did weigh in that they were comfortable with the way the entrance is designed for this number of
I remember
units.
that, all right, thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Mullen?
After, I've reviewed Judy's comments before, my refresher tonight, I said before that I was happy that you guys listened to us when we had concerns and comments about design, features, amenities, and you took it under advisement. You provided amenities, design features. I like that. I think that looks nice. The walking trails, ADA compliance, those things will be considered when you're doing them because of the senior housing. So we want to make sure we have curb cuts or curb access, I should say, for those, and flat spots and maybe some benches or chairs along the way, some hardscape features where people could rest.
That's a fairly flat site, so
Okay.
not a lot of,
Yeah, ADA compliance, I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Okay, great. And then has there been any more talks with Mr. Lynn regarding the tennis courts?
I met with him one time, and we talked about it. He's all on board. Just waiting for the next step to figure out how either the land either gets donated to the high school, or that portion of the land gets donated, or
I think So I think that's a good question for town council, how you guys can work that into terms, whether you donate it, whether it's a shared easement access. Because I certainly think it's an amenity for your community as well, the development you're providing, and I wouldn't want to see people that are residing in your,
Absolutely.
you know, I want it to be open to any resident of Littleton, kind of like the courts are here, you know, that.
Yeah, I mean, the high school typically, he says they use them between 2 and 5 or whatever, you
Right,
know.
and the
when
rest
they
of the
have,
time.
You know,
Yeah.
most of the time they're either.
So, you know.
But there's a huge need, he says, for
Yeah.
additional tennis courts at the high school.
Mike, could you ask Mike Lynn for specs on a tennis court, so
Yeah.
you're familiar?
Yeah,
Just what-
we did talk about, there's a couple tennis court, you know, specialists in the state that just do tennis courts. You know, they've done a couple for them already.
Well, because it's an amenity you're going to provide for your development, but also to the town, I think it's an amenity that has value, that you should share the cost and the value with us to understand the undertaking you're providing to us as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
one more comment.
So with that said, regarding the tennis courts and anything else that we might determine is a factor for approval, given the propensity for things to go non-memorialized, non-written, I think it's really important that if we could also ask town council how to actually assign these property, or this portion of the property, as part of this overall approval process, so that we don't go with, oh, well, we agreed to do this at such and such meeting, but it was never really documented, it was not memorialized, there was no date assigned. I think it's important that we actually move forward, being able to put things in writing, signing off on them, so that everybody knows what the expectations are.
I think that's helpful.
Anything else?
Can I just ask a follow-up question to that? I'm sorry. So you mean, like, when sort of trigger dates as the development proceeds with when certain things are to come online or to be, is that what you mean?
So what I mean is, for example, if this particular plan moves forward, then what I'd like to ask town council is, so when does that property actually get assigned, whether it's to the town, whether it's to whomever?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
And
and
it
that
could
it
be
be
done as
in writing.
As an easement, with the high school would have the right to
Exactly.
have a, and.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Rather than
We're happy
being
to-
at the tail end of the development phase, but rather putting it all up front so that we are all very clear about deliverable, if you will.
We are
Just
fine
to
with that.
to piggyback on what Anna's saying, I think that the question she asked earlier about Cooper Farm is that, as board members, we get the question constantly, I thought you guys were getting that house. So we then bring it to you guys, are we? When are we? I know that somewhere along the
It's in
line.
the community host agreement that the town is getting the house.
Okay, so, but
It's written there,
People-
very
people think
clear,
we're the
just
ones
like
that
the land was
negotiated.
donated, very clear when we did it. There was no hidden agenda when it was getting donated.
Right.
The town got the land prior to us issuing any permits. So there was nothing that was not written down or said about
Okay.
that. And it was very clear about that.
And just to follow up, I think if we can be very specific in the conditions on any decision that's done, I think that we're both better off.
Yeah,
I
I would,
agree.
I would also certainly look to front load the agreement. And when I say that, it's similar to a mortgage where we get our interest first and you pay the principal at the end. I'd like to see that the tennis courts are something that we see first before houses permits are issued, stuff like that. So just want to make you aware, that's what we're looking at this time around, so.
And we did that with the land too, so.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing, I'm just saying that we're looking to front load it, that's all, in my opinion.
In your opinion?
In my humble opinion.
Who's building the tennis courts?
Well, I had a discussion with them about it. I would do the majority of the work, and either there's two different types of tennis courts. There's three types. There's asphalt, like they have over on the other side of the parking lot, which they have, and then there's concrete, which is substantially more expensive. And, you know,
So it'd probably be their conversation would be some combination of Michael maybe doing some of the excavation work,
I prep
donating
it
the land.
to donate the land and prep it to, you know, the surfacing. And then they take it, you know, from the, you know, their specialist gets the tennis court surfacing, whatever type they would want. And-
Fencing and striping and whatever comes with
Yes,
a tennis court.
So, I mean, that's like that has to be a discussion. But we talked about having that discussion sooner, but it's like, let's get through this and we'll sit down and, you know what I mean, hash it all out. And, I mean, I'm sure there's a will, you know, we want to work together, so I'm sure there's a way.
2 tennis courts would fit on our property, 3 would be better for Mike, and there is a portion of one of the tennis courts being on the high school property.
That one
So,
looks like 1.5 or.
yeah, I mean, those were just,
Conceptual currently, I
yes,
understand.
I mean, we just, you know, that's a piece of paper, approximate size on a tennis court with it, you know, if there was a fence just around one tennis court.
Again, it's an amenity and an asset, and it's something the town wants, needs, and I think we all benefit from you providing it. So.
I have one other question about the overall property right now. So, existing trees, when you all go in, I mean, do you typically just raise everything, or do you leave some trees?
Fell a
What
bunch
did you
of
say?
clear cut it.
He's
Joking.
being a wise guy.
No,
Not the town.
we only need to take down the amount of trees to build the project with minimal space around it, so you can get a construction equipment around it. There's no need to take any more trees than you have to. You know, the site's not where it's a hilly site, you can blend into the existing site with the, you know, the topo of what we are proposing, without doing a lot of cutting and filling there. It's just it's more of a level site.
I just think it would be fabulous to try to keep as many trees as possible. I mean, driving by that and you just see this thicket of trees, and recognize that a lot of times in new developments, everything gets raised and then new trees are planted, and, well, you get to see them in 20 years. So that would be really, really terrific if we can save as many as we can.
Probably on the northern part of the property. This would be the, you could keep a big buffer there. I mean, obviously, if we're putting in a walking trail, you have to take some trees down to put in the trails and the houses.
A lot of them are mature trees, so there's not a lot of clusters around. There's a, you know, you cut one tree down, you have a huge area where that one tree is down, but there's still a canopy over the area as well.
Do you have any more questions? I do. I have a couple. I read Judy's letter, and the one part that sticks out to me, and I asked this from day one, and now Judy memorializes it in her letter, is the question the board needs to address is this: is Littleton gaining enough public benefit from the development to justify the density that exceeds what is permitted as of right? As of right now, you have 3 houses. You're asking us for 16, 17? 17. I'm asking, what benefit did this town get to go from 3 houses to 17? What are we getting?
The town adopted this.
I get that.
I didn't make this up.
Well, and if I may, what we're providing is a smaller house that is going to be.
No, I'm asking for the benefits to the town, not the size of the house.
No, and that is
It's
a
not
benefit.
affordable. It's,
A 2-bedroom house of this size and this scale, with allowing us to have this kind of density, will make a much more affordable house than
What-
a
what number
4-bedroom
are we
house
talking?
on an acre.
what price point are we talking?
And that, as you know, is really going to
Yeah,
develop
you're gonna tell
on,
me it's market rate, I know.
it's going to develop on how soon we get permitted, what the costs are to go of building, you know, the cost of lumber has gone up this year. So the goal is to make these as affordable, and you've heard us from day one, we're trying to make something that's both desired and affordable for residents of the town who are coming out of a bigger house, they don't want that big space.
It's an empty nester, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about affordable units in the town of Littleton, and they get the density, there has to be a trade-off. That's what Judy's letter was all about. What are we getting to give you 17 units as opposed to 3 that you have by right? What are we getting? Tell me, give me the balance right now is like this. Get me somewhere like this. How are you doing that?
So in terms of two things. One, if it's 3 houses, we're going to have 3 mega houses. What we have here are houses that are going to be accessible to many more people. That is a benefit, and that's something that the bylaw, I believe, is trying to achieve. In terms of density, you saw the first plans we came in with had twice as many units as this. We have definitely pared back to try to make it more spacious, more open, less dense, particularly in direct response to what the board was asking for. We have come in and offered up amenities that we think make this a very livable community. So as opposed to having 3 separate houses out in the suburbs, this is making a community where people from town can come together, have a smaller house that is easier to, it's going to be very low maintenance. One of the things I forgot to mention, and Judy had requested, is things that we're doing to make these affordable to operate. So it's going to be a condominium. The management fees or the condo fees are low because there's little to do there. But we're also putting heat pumps in each unit. That's a cost that the developer is absorbing, which will make operating and running one of these cottages or homes about a quarter to a third of the price for heating as a traditional gas-fueled home in town. And again, it's an upfront cost that the developer is assuming to make these more affordable to operate for the residents.
But you're still, I get back to the price. You're going from 3 houses at, say, 700, 800, to 17 houses at 500,000. What's the benefit to the town to allow you to build 17 houses? What are we getting? 3 tennis courts? Nah, I don't think that's enough. I think, and I understand the problem here. You have a small lot, you don't have a lot of space to build more units so you can put more on there and make more money to give more amenities. But you're not.
Not all of them are going to be 500,000. There's almost half are duplexes. They're going to be less. Plus, there's still affordable units in there as well.
There's 2 affordable units.
But it's still something.
2 out of the 17.
2.
Okay. How many other projects did that get approved last year from this bylaw?
No, there's only 2 in front of us right now. The point I'm trying to get is bocce courts, walking trails along the perimeter of this, and a couple of tennis courts that may or may not be built by the developer, that may be taken over by the town, still doesn't get us like this. What I would like to see is more, as in Judy's letter, either money put aside to get some transportation, because people aren't going to be able to move from there. They're not going to be able to go anywhere. If you put seniors in there, there's not going to be a way for them to get to the center of town. It's not near the center of town.
There already is in Littleton. The Council on Aging has a van.
I get that, but it should be.
$2 $2 credit. We can do stuff like maybe we donate money for the van for the year.
Something like that, or something like maybe put some money aside so that we can build a senior center for the seniors, since that's the amenity that they really need, not a bocce court and not a raised place where you can plant stuff. That's the kind of amenities I'm talking, to make it almost worthwhile. From where I'm sitting, it's not a benefit, because you can't guarantee it's a lower price point. You can't guarantee that it's even going to be available for seniors. That's the problem I have with this whole thing. There's no guarantee that a senior's even going to live in that unit. It's not age restricted, correct?
But the bylaws do not
I
age
get
restrict.
that. I get that. I'm
So
still.
what are we talking? I don't understand. Like, so putting some money aside, is that what you mean?
And could we have if there's a proposal from the board to say, this plan would work for you if there was X dollars put aside for the Council on Aging, then that's something that we could
I think that's
talk
what-
about.
From my standpoint, I'd like to talk about that. Now, I don't know if anybody on the rest of the board would like to talk about it. I think that makes more sense than tennis courts that are really, that's not what the seniors are looking for. They're looking for a senior center. They're looking for a place to meet together, things like that.
If I may, I just want to go back to Anthony. Anthony, right now, Council on Aging, their transportation that they provide, a $2 per ride or whatever it is there high demand, and are they able to meet the demand, or do they need more
There's two of the vans that are running all the time.
all the time? So there would be a benefit to providing a third van or another driver to pick up more hours on the two vans that we currently have?
Or money to help keep the council on aging with those vans.
There's a lot
Or
of
up
things
all.
that the town needs.
Right.
But it's my understanding that the vans, the two vans we have are currently oversubscribed.
Right.
You could run another van with, if it were available, but
Okay. So yeah, there is definitely a need. Okay.
So there's a need there, and if this developer was to be able to provide funds for a van or a van itself, do we have drivers available? Or do we also?
Drivers are always a challenge to get, but it's.
Available?
Anyone on board available? Call it Uber.
What about a senior center? What about setting up money aside to start as these come in?
I think that's a great idea, but right now we don't have one, and we've identified a need, and he's already spoke to actually providing for that need. So
There's both needs.
I understand that. So I think as a board, on our retreat or anything else, we could talk about establishing.
Yeah, on
something.
our retreat.
Unfortunately, by the time, granted, we're pretty slow on this one, but by the time we get to our retreat, they'll be built by the time we ever have our retreat.
I hope not. I hope we have our retreat for that.
Anyway,
So-
my point is,
Maybe someone can put a proposal together for us to look at and say, yes, we can do that. I mean,
All right, so I'm going to piggyback on what he's saying, just so,
But I don't
so
think
I'm
we
in
should
support.
give up the tennis courts, to be honest. I know that you're not thrilled with them, but I think it really will.
It is a
Like, when
benefit to
I'm
the town, and it does help.
60, I would like to live there. I mean, I would like to go to a raised flower bed and then play tennis in the morning. I mean, I don't know, call me, I think it would be nice. And I don't, if I had to pay $450 or $500, if I'm coming from a $650,000 house and I could put 100, you know what I mean? Maybe that would be affordable for me. I don't know. I don't think it's,
500 is not affordable for a senior. They've been telling
it
us,
depends on what they're coming from.
they're all of them. They're barely, most of the seniors that have talked to us, that have come to these meetings, are having
I know,
trouble
there's-
at
The market will
197.
bear what it'll bear.
But that's not about the market. There are
They're
towns around
providing
us.
2 affordable units, because that's what the bylaw says.
Right.
What I'm getting at is, I certainly don't want to see the tennis courts go away. What I would like, what I'm proposing, to piggyback on his, so we keep this moving forward, is take a look at the specs for a council on aging van, and see how much you're willing to contribute to that.
and it can be something that gets into yearly donations from the condo fee that can be put into the condo fee that the association of the condo donates to the council on aging yearly as well. You know, that can be part of their condo fee.
I mean,
I think it's a great idea. I think all that's.
No, I disagree with that one. It's not.
I mean, I didn't say I wasn't gonna pay for, or I wouldn't donate something. I'd like to, but I'd like to see someone give me something to say I can do it. I don't know what to donate.
Go ahead,
just goes
Sherry.
to work every day.
Your argument is that the pricing is high for seniors, and yet you're asking the developer to give yet additional money per unit for whatever amenity. All you're going to do is drive the price higher, because the developer's going to pass that on. Not personally, please, but any developer is going to jack that into the price to the senior. Talking about putting it in the condo fee, it falls on the senior again.
Well, I think
This
what-
is a project that this board and this town said we wanted in this configuration. We didn't say restrict to seniors. We didn't say it has to be of a certain price point in the bylaw when we voted at a town meeting. The fields of all people in this town have already delivered a very nice, very desirable senior project down on White Street. This model looks entirely the same to me. And I think what you just said, Ed, is true. If the cost of lumber and the cost of the market will bear 500, that's where it's going to be. But if you have what are they, 1,800 square feet units? 1,400 square foot units, you're not going to get 500 for those. You're going to be in the low 4s, and those duplexes are going to be in the 3s, and the developer is going to give you 2 affordables. And all right, so you ask him for a certain amount per unit when he's selling, when the money's on the table, a stipend, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 a unit, and let that go into your fund for the transportation, and call it a day. But you can't keep squeezing the developer, because it's only going to fall on the end user. And I'm speaking out because I'm here representing the Webbers this time, not the Fields. And the Webbers have been waiting almost a year for this to come to fruition. Mrs. Weber has been patiently waiting. She could sell the lot to 3 users and build 3 McMansions and deliver nothing to this town. This has been an ongoing process between the Fields and the Webbers to try to come to a nice project that will parrot White Street where she's living, which she loves. And she's the poster child for White Street.
This, all I'm trying to say, I see your hand in a second. All I'm trying to say is that there has to be a balance. As Judy puts it in, there has to be a balance that offsets why we're doing it. We're doing it for the benefit of the town of Littleton, not for Mrs. Weber and not for the developer. It's for the town of Littleton, the people that are here. And they come in and they fill this room in droves and telling us they can't afford $500,000 houses. So in order for us to build empty nesters, what's in it for the town?
Mark, you were asked by this group.
Can I finish? She just said they're not, in her opinion, and I trust her opinion, they're not gonna sell for 500. They're gonna sell for low 4s and mid 3s. So
They're gonna
drop
sell
the-
with the market.
And Mark,
With the market there.
this developer came before you and said, let me do 8plexes because I can get your prices down with an 8plex. And you said, absolutely not,
But
we
his
want
price that
singles.
those were still over 4.
No, they weren't. He started in the high 2s, low 3s.
No, he was
And you
not.
said, am I wrong? You all said,
No,
Mark,
yeah.
mid 3s. He said, we can
All
get
I'm
them in
trying
the
to say is, in
3s.
order to get it, to make that it makes sense for the town of Littleton, that's all I'm looking at, is the town of Littleton, there's gotta be a balance, that's all I'm
We're
saying.
getting 3 tennis courts for the high school.
I don't think 3 tennis courts for the high school is the balance.
Wait till you see the value of 3 tennis courts
And
before
you're
you say
getting a
that.
community,
Wait a
Mark,
second.
and you're getting an elder or a empty nester community that will be very desirable. I've said to you over and over again, the best model for elders in this community is the manufactured home parks, because they can all live nearby each other but have their own space. This delivers that. That's your benefit to
There's a
the
difference,
elders.
a manufactured home is 100,000, these are
I know,
400,000.
I know, because we don't have manufactured home bylaws.
I'm just trying to
But
make
if
it,
you let them deliver something like contribution to a van, there you go. And that will get the
At least I
elders from
propose
here
that.
to,
That's-
yeah.
if I did nothing, at least I got that
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Okay, anybody
Yeah.
else? Anyone, Mrs. Weber, please. Yes.
Yes.
Patricia Weber, 3 Jeanette Way. My sister, who is 90, just broke her hip, and she has come to me and is staying with me in my wonderful condo. The therapist came in and she said, wow, I've never been in these. And she loved it. And she said, you know, she lives in Littleton, and I don't know her whole name except Kim, that's all I know. And she said, we have a 5-bedroom house and it's just my mother and me because I lost my husband. And she said, all the patients I go to need this kind of thing. And she said, this is wonderful, and I'd like one myself. And I think this is what you need, not a great big mansion with more school kids. Help the old people.
That's what I'm trying to do, Mrs. Weber. I'd like to see more units with lower prices. Not everybody is leaving a 5-bedroom house that they can sell for $700,000 or $800,000. They have to come in and go into a $200,000 or a $250,000, a small little house that's inexpensive. I'm just trying to make sure that the people
don't
that
need to
come along
downsize.
down the road are gonna be able to afford these units. These are empty nesters, that's what they are, that's what they're going to be.
He's on board.
Oh, I am? I'm on board?
You're gonna be on board if they
Oh.
come back to you with a per-house
Don't know.
contribution
I
toward
want
the
to close
van.
and vote and move this thing forward.
Yeah, I think so.
Put a number up, put a number up
I-
for the, put
I
a number
think-
in each closing.
The problem is you're trying to get it on both ends. You wanted to get it affordable, or you want to get more from him. Which
I
one?
do.
Well,
Yeah, I do want it.
Put a number
both
up,
ways.
put a number
I do
on
want it both ways.
each unit.
I wanted, if you're gonna increase the density, when we did this bylaw, the reason we did the bylaw, because you increase the density, you're gonna get lower prices.
Mark, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask you to poll the board about their receptivity to this plan, these amenities, with maybe a stipend contribution per sale on the market units, so that this project can move forward, go to
You know
Green
what, you read my
International.
mind. I hadn't quite got there, and
Thank you.
Mr. Mullen
Thank you.
interrupted me. Jamie, what do you think?
I'm not opposed to the current plan in front of me, but before I make a vote, I want to see in writing or come to an agreement on something that can be done in exchange to help the elderly. I know we can't dictate pricing. The houses will go for what the market will bear, and where we are, it's extremely high. I know that I've heard from elderly folks that they can't afford this type of, those figures, and and there's no promise that they're gonna be able to move into them, so, I think, but I'm not gonna vote on it until we've come to an agreement of what we can do in exchange, whether it's the van,
Okay.
et cetera. And I wanna see everything agreed on and in writing, right down to the tennis courts, because in some of the past developments, stuff that's been chatted about in the meetings,
Okay,
nobody's held their feet to the fire.
that's fair. Mr. Mullen?
So instead of the ban, I would make it for, at closing, a fee that goes to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to the town of Littleton, not to exceed $3,000 per unit.
That's a good idea.
Anna?
Doing the math on that, okay. Yes, I agree with what Mr. Mullen just said.
And I also agree with what Jamie said about everything being a draft
I
document.
think it needs to be all tied up, yeah.
Yep.
So your 3,000 is fine, you don't care where it goes, whether it goes to the,
No, I said I agree with what Ed just said, that it should go to the Affordable Housing Trust.
in lieu, but not, okay, all right. I can live with that. I have no problem with that. I just want to make sure that at some point, there's something for the town gets out of it. Because it is empty nester. And I get that it's
You
not
didn't
your
a-
fault.
You didn't ask the developer if he agreed to
If we come up with an agreement, an arrangement, something like that, could you live with that?
Yes.
See, I kind of really might.
We can't pay that on the affordables.
The two
Like
affordables you don't
An
pay?
extra $3,000 on the affordables.
On the
is
market
like-
rates, that's,
it.
I mean, the affordables.
that's fair, because you're getting the whole unit.
Yeah, that's fair, I gotta give you that.
Minus the
Thank
two
you, Jan.
affordable units.
That's so.
Okay with you?
Maybe make
Take
it,
it $6,000 off the number.
or make the number
So
bigger,
3,200
then they
per
could take
house.
the $6,000.
Yeah.
We'll work it out as far, once we get through the process, about the tennis courts, who's building them, how much it's gonna cost, and where we all sit on that, and a stipend for
I'll
each
sit with
lot.
Mike and we'll
Yeah.
figure out.
Figure out
And
costs.
Marn will put a call in the town council to figure out how we work out the access easement or land swap or whatever it might be. And then, in the draft, like I said, we'll front load our agreement so that we get what we want for the town, all of it, and then
I understand like getting everything in writing and legally, but we just need to make sure like financing wise, like if we have to pay upfront for the entire tennis courts, you know what I mean? Like I just don't know how, we just have to figure out financing stuff, so just don't get like everything can be legally documented and have timelines, but financing wise, I just have to make sure that everything can work, do you know what I mean?
Okay, so what I'm hearing from that is just to make sure that we have plenty of time to discuss
Let's
the draft decision.
Run schedules
before-
by us
right.
before you, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we? So we're moving
It can be
into-
formalized, I just needed to look at the
So
schedule.
we're going from the conceptual plan to a definitive plan, is that what the board would like to do at this point? Send it out to,
It's not it's a special permit application. They did the A&R for the lot,
right,
so it's not a subdivision process.
well, we have to, we gotta send the rest of it out to Pier, we have to send it out to Green, and just continue then.
And with your direction, we could start working on conditions so that we have
think-
something in writing.
Yeah, perhaps a draft that we could be doing parallel with.
That's fine.
With the, and you have the definitive site plans.
Right.
We took this, this was a nice, pretty picture, so I kept it, but we took this from the September meeting after we got your feedback when we were at the fire station, and updated the detailed site plans and the drainage calculations.
We
and all
didn't send any of it out because we didn't want to spend your money until we knew where we were all going with
that.
it.
Fair enough, but I just, you have it, so.
Okay,
you just.
so we could send it
Yep.
out to Green.
And if we could, just for calendaring, if they can turn it around so we can be in front of you at the next meeting and get things finalized, that
Can we
would be.
get Green's report back by the
I
10th?
think so.
Okay, 10th of December, we'll put you on to the 10th of
But
January.
Holidays and stuff.
I'll know within, a day or two.
Because I think you have the money in hand already and you have the plans, so it's just a matter of shooting those out.
Okay,
You said that it was the 10th for the next meeting?
10th of January.
Make a motion to continue.
Anyone want to second that?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a 9 o'clock that we're a couple of minutes late on. The Barron's Way.
Well, we can ask Maren, I mean, that's not a hearing issue. Thank you, Sherry.
Where's Peter when you need him?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You have
Good
plans
evening.
for everybody or just?
No, I don't have plans for everybody. There was one delivered to town, and I have one here. But I'm Sherry Gould. This is an informal discussion of a potential lot division on Barron Way. My client is Jenny Barron. Jenny is of the famous Barron family, who is named after Barron Way, or who Barron Way is named after. Jenny is the daughter-in-law to the Barons, who developed that area and had all the land and sold off the lots over time. Jenny and her husband, David, lived here since 1995 in a lot down by that lake area off Barron Way.
Can you take that outside, please? Thank you. Oh, sorry.
So unfortunately, David passed away in November of 2016. He was a self-employed contractor, and he didn't leave his wife and his family well off with retirement funds or insurance proceeds and everything. And they own this land that, I want to just take the earlier plan out. It's this Lot 3 containing 3.2 acres. It is Barron Way from this point all the way down to Spectacle Pond, and another 1 acre called Parcel A. So it's about 4.2 acres. And if you put it into context with our assessor's maps, which is interesting, I've colored it wrong. But you put it into context with the assessor's maps. This is the Spectacle Pond frontage. This is the lot, not this one, but this one that goes down to the lake. And if you look at it, you'll see it's very near the 11 acres that you're considering for Roger Kennard's development of 17 homes. You'll see that it's about 2 or 3 times what everything else in this neighborhood is size-wise. And I will just remind you that about a year ago, I came in with a very similar argument on Cricket Lane for clients of mine. And Cricket Lane had the same problem, that it was kind of developed up to this point, and then going down to the water this way are all these cottagey houses that this board gave frontage rights to develop new homes on, even though they were 15, 20-foot width off Cricket Lane. And then my client and I came in, and it's exactly the same thing as Jenny's. He had about a 3-acre piece here, and we asked for the same thing. Please use this Cricket Lane stub, if you will, as adequate frontage based on how it's been used, and let him have the second lot. So on Jenny's, what I did is I went to Russ Wilson, and I asked him to configure any way he could 2 or 3 lots out of what Jenny's got. I actually tried to get a short cul-de-sac off Spectacle Pond, and get a 3-lot subdivision so that we would have real frontage on Spectacle Pond for all of it. And it just didn't work from the coefficient and the ratios that we're supposed to have. But it worked pretty nicely to actually portion off Jenny's house, which is the plan that I sent to the board to look at. This is the draft plan of Russ Wilson. If you were to take Jenny's house and give her a conforming 1 acre with frontage on Barron Way, which is her frontage, which is what she's been using for frontage since 1995.
So which one's hers?
This is her home. This is her home right here. And she's always used Barron Way as her frontage. Her street number is Barron Way. firemen will go there to bear.
So this is her whole piece right here.
No, this is her piece right here.
No, it's all, right now,
The
it's
whole
all.
piece right now is here.
Her frontage is.
And here, and then even this is hers too, so it's a total of 4 acres. So what we're proposing is to piece off Jenny's as a conforming 1-acre lot with the frontage on Barron Way, and create a new lot, which is a hammerhead lot, with the 35-foot neck on Spectacle, a square, the 150 square, and the 2 acres. So that the new lot conforms to the zoning bylaw for dimension. What it doesn't conform to is the ratios, which is why I did this as a discussion. Because we can put the dividing lot line any way you want, or we can pull a parcel out to make the ratios work. But when I look at this, it didn't make any sense to me to worry about the coefficient. You got a 4-acre lot where there are ticky-tacky cottages and small houses and everything all around it. So if we make 2 nice-sized lots, I don't think the coefficient is going to matter that much. But that's why I'm here informally, to ask the board whether you can see your way to give Jenny the extra lots so that she can help support her family, and whether we can get Russ Wilson to draw it the way you find it the most palatable. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that I understand these new bylaws are being looked at to offer something to seniors, but what you have over here is Roger Kennard getting 17 houses on 11 acres, and what I'm asking you to do for a widow is 2 houses on 4 acres. So,
Why don't you put 16 on 4 acres?
I'd love to. I'd love to.
So what you're saying is your client is going to be staying on this particular property, and this particular piece right here would then get sold off.
Yeah. And by the way, we did go to Roger or his predecessor when the engineering was being done for that. We asked if they would take it as part of their development, and they just weren't going to offer her.
Can I ask the board a question?
Yeah.
This is one of those deals where you should sit on it and do nothing. Which is what we should have done at Cricket Lane. It gets us into a murky area where if you want to do what's right, that's fine, but I think we have her come in formally with it. We make no decision, and 21 days later, she gets it.
Say that again?
It's an A&R.
It's
Okay.
an A&R, and if we don't act on it within
Right.
21 days, they get it automatically. There's a few issues with this, and I don't think the board really wants to get into it. Which what we should have done on Cricket, because what happened on Cricket is exactly what I said. Once we did that, Roger Kennard came back in and tried to use Cricket to use it for frontage, because we gave 1 lot on it. I don't want to see anybody try to do more development out here. I have no problem with this one house. Let them do the frontage here. They come in with an A&R plan, and we sit on it and do nothing, and they get it within 21 days. Not a great way to do it, but the ends justify the means. How's that? Is that a better way? Or are you going to weigh in and?
No, I'm just trying to remember on Cricket Lane, I thought that the board, I don't remember if the board.
The board voted on it. I abstained from voting, but the rest of the board voted in favor of it. But I think it should have, that one, like this one, we should have tabled it, like we did with the Rod and Gun Club, when a couple of members refused to vote on it. They got it within the 21 days because they didn't.
Gun Club?
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
No,
Because you couldn't hunt.
Yeah,
the Sudbury Valley.
Sudbury Valley.
She said you could duck hunt if you.
All I'm trying to do is, rather than open up a can of worms, I'd rather see, I think it's innocuous, and it's not about the odd safety lot formula. It's about the adequacy of Barron Way, and rather than get into it and deal with it, let her
So-
have her frontage.
I appreciate the advice. My question back to council would be, you do the A&R, but you don't meet all the requirements of zoning. Could you still be denied a building permit if we don't vote to call it a building lot?
No, I think once the A&R is signed by the planning board 21 days later, we can get a building permit on it.
She'll have the frontage, she'll have the frontage there. The question, she won't. She's not asking for a building permit for that, she's asking for a building permit for here. If we swap the frontage and her frontage is here, she has adequate frontage on Spectacle Pond. Rather than get into the history of it on television, I'd just say it would make more sense to keep all parties involved, that we don't go down the viability of Barron Way. It's opening up cans, stuff that was, it's 20, 25 years old, and not gonna be easily. We had once talked about how to make it so that it would, the road was more adequate. Rather than address it, let her have her frontage right there. You got 35 feet there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that would be my suggestion when she comes in January 10th with a full-blown plan like that, or February 10th, I don't care what 10th you come in. But-
January, please.
Yes, but come in that way, and then we take it under advisement, and we forget to ask for an extension. That would, I think that's the easiest way, and I'm willing to discuss it with the rest of the board, what their,
Well, I'd say because there's been so much controversy around the whole area, I think I would just feel good if it would be okay to just swing by there tomorrow and take a look for myself, if that's okay.
sure, yeah. We're gonna see the frontage here. Your driveway actually used to come from the front. Does it still come from that little spot there? Do you come in off of Barron Way or both?
She explained to me the Rosses have moved that driveway. The Rosses ended up buying a lot of the lots around there. And I don't know if you remember them, but they have a house and then they have like a Reiki.
Yeah, the Reiki thing's back here, right?
beside it. So instead of Barron Way coming all the way around like this now, the Rosses own most of this stuff, so they've brought it in, and there's a cul-de-sac here, and then it goes on to Jenny Barron's house. So it's really a lot better than it ever was, because there is turnouts and places to plow and everything. And I just would ask you that if you're going down there, please take the time, if it's not snowing, to also go Cricket Lane in both directions, because when Cricket Lane splits off into the two Ts, you'll see what I'm talking about as to how those two streets sort of develop topsy-turvy. It reminds me of Green Needles, where there really is no frontage, and because there were lake area homes and cottages that were then converted to homes, they all ended up having frontage on private ways.
Right, they all
Yeah.
have easements over each
Yeah.
other. Easements over easements is what
Yeah.
they really have down there. It's the same kind of deal.
Can you get the A&R done for next?
Yes.
Oh, gotcha. So you could have it tomorrow for,
I was asking her.
Yeah.
it's just an easier way than have to open up that
Do you
can
have
of
room on the agenda for,
Absolutely. I'm struggling a little bit with, if you don't meet the lot shape formula, would she be able to get, would this new lot be able to get a building permit? Because it wouldn't meet zoning at that point. So-
What I'll try to do is get Russ to make it, you suggested, and it's a good idea, probably to have a parcel that's separate from the lot, so the lot will meet it.
Right, and that way, there's no question
'Cause you
whether or
have
not they
existing
can
parcel
sign
A
it
over there, right?
after the 21 days, because
They
I've
do
always
that.
heard that you can't sign an A&R that, for a
Violated
non-conforming
zoning,
lot.
yeah, right, and that was my question.
Or the other thing I could do is have her go down to the ZBA to have a variance from the lot shape if that's necessary.
Right, and at that point, it kicks into the question of whether you need a subdivision for the planning board to sign it, so I,
I'll try to get Russ to take the parcel out if I can. I appreciate that, that's what we're here for.
But I think you need to know whether or not we're gonna let it happen or not, so. I think you need to ask the four people here if they're willing to just take it under advisement and see what happens. I'm good with it. Are you good with it, Ed?
I'm okay with
You have an abutter here. Do you have anything?
Yeah, didn't even realize, well, I realized I'm in a butter to Barron Way, but I came here because I like these guys, they see me, actually, hockey season started, high school hockey season, not gonna see me till like March. I don't know what you're gonna do.
I don't know.
Maybe worry, you're kind of worried about.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I mean, I have no problem, I mean, we have frontage on Cricket Lane, but we actually have two lots, so we live one back, then we have our private way, and then we have our lot. It's a great little pond. I certainly, if you were talking about putting in 16 houses, then I might stand up and go, wait a minute, my pontoon boat, you know, I like to be able to cruise around out there. So, no, and I think, but going back to what you were saying about easements and things like that, because you have frontage, right? So The houses that go up there, obviously, they would have rights to the water, which is, that's fine.
Actually, I don't know that this one.
This
No, this one
Oh, they're
would
not right
not,
on
no,
there?
this would not.
This doesn't touch.
This has frontage on Spectacle Pond, so this is,
Yeah.
What's that?
No frontage on Fairway.
this would
On
have
Spectacle
frontage on Spectacle Pond Road. Okay.
Yeah, because that's why I was just, when you said frontage, I wasn't sure.
No waterfront frontage. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna still go out there tomorrow, though.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Anybody else? Okay.
Nice to meet
You'll
you.
be copied.
Take a walk. Take a walk.
For what?
2.5 million.
We're done now, right?
Question hasn't killed me
Set the
yet.
lights.
You need to move to.
I make a motion that we close the hearing and
No.
go home.
No, we have
This one.
item E on board business. Littleton commuter rail station area study, study board draft policy.
We already talked about that.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.